Welcome back to Cascais in Portugal. It is coastal race day, a big challenge, and of course Sled are the kings of the coastal, so far won both coastal races in Croatia. Joining me today in the studio is Afonso Domingos, three times Portuguese Olympic sailor and also CEO and skipper of the bigamous programme back in the day, I think 2005 for 5 years. What's it feel like to be back with the 52s and see the fleet, Afonso?
Thank you for inviting me. I feel really good. The only thing that I was disappointed was to see in the TV and not be in the boat sailing.
Yeah, well, we can see it up close and personal over the course of this coastal race. It's about 30 miles, I think. They've just simplified the course very, very slightly. Anyway, yesterday was a good day on the water. We had two races, standard windward leeward, and then a slightly longer extended windward leeward. And we had this was yesterday's highlights from the water. Well, sunshine, wind, waves, welcome to day 2 in Cascais for the ROLEX TP52 World Championships. Another big day in prospect, and preparation is key. Nobody can afford a breakdown. Well, as we all remember, light winds in Croatia for the first two regattas. Here it's strong winds and big changes on board for the setups. It's all in the detail.
Cascais always delivers in terms of 20 to 25 knots, so I would say most boats will be using their AP main, which is a little shorter in the head, longer on the foot, flatter overall. And then in terms of spinnakers, definitely A2 pluses, A4s, which would be probably all polyester rather than nylon polyester mix. Grinders have a hard time, and they had a real hard time yesterday on our boat because the boat was full of water. The coastal race in terms of the hiking is the one that really kills you. You know, when you come around the leeward mark and the navigator says, 10 on port, 40 on starboard. Oh.
Race 3, a little bit less wind than the first day, about 15 knots on the start line, a little bit flatter water. Luna Rossa choose the pin bias on the line, get away nicely, cross to the right just at the right time, and get the ley line call to the windward mark perfect. Top mark, it's Luna Rossa, Azzurra, Onda. The gain is downwind for Preveza, but at the finish, it's Luna Rossa ahead of Azzurra. Quantum Racing get third.
I think that shows that we have the ability to fight, and let's see if tomorrow we can fight even more if it's possible.
Race 4 is an extended windward leeward race, a beautiful port tack start, a peach from Allegri. They get across the fleet very early on, and they lead up to the top mark from Luna Rossa in second, Sled and Quantum Racing. Down the run, there's a gain to Sled and nicely get them right up to Allegri's line through the leeward gate. But at the finish, Allegra get their third win of the season. Sled are second, Luna Rossa third. Top of the table still, Quantum Racing.
Winning the last race of the day, the semi-coastal, was great feeling, especially with that start. Wait a little bit, we didn't want to show everyone else too early, so we went halfway and then we pulled the trigger at 30 seconds. And it worked very well.
And the standings after 4 races: first Quantum Racing on 10, second Azzurra on 12, and third Allegri on 14 points. Well, that's it from Cascais. More sunshine, more wind, more waves at the ROLEX TP52 World Championship. Join us again for more action. Well, that was yesterday. I say today, the coastal race. Afonso, what's your forecast for today? We're seeing a little less wind than forecast.
Yes, the forecast was saying clear sky, some clouds in the morning, but then the sky clear and 18 knots of wind. And I pass close by to the boats in the shore, and I saw that it's not so much wind now. It needs the sky to clear to get stronger.
So how does that affect your first bait? What would you be doing on this first bait if you were the strategist on board one of the boats? What's the key?
It depends a little bit how much is the throwing direction there now. But usually the right is all the time favored. It's only a question when the wind is going to build up.
And in general, on the coastal courses, is this an area that gives you lots of opportunities if you're behind?
No, it's give more opportunities now that is lighter wind than when it's stable wind.
Yeah,
when it's
course.
Stable wind is more difficult. With this wind like this, you can play more the game.
So it's a little bit more of an open race course than in Croatia. Croatia was a light wind venue, and Sled were kings of the coastal, won both coastal races. We spoke with the navigator Andrea Vicentini this morning to see can they do it again here in Cascais. Sled king of the coastal race, can you make it 3 in a row?
We're looking towards it. Well, it's difficult here. It's different scenarios, a lot of islands in Croatia. Here it's a little bit more straightforward. It's, I would say, a little bit more easy. The big variable is the current as we get close to the river, for sure. Weather looks quite stable, similar to yesterday, maybe a couple of knots less. And yeah, it's full on, you know. We're just looking at every detail and just doing all sort of plans to figure out what will happen. And yeah, cross fingers, and it should be a great race for us. Looking good.
So that's Andrea Vicentini, the navigator on the very successful sled, winners of both the coastal races. How much pressure is on the start in this coastal race, Afonso?
Usually it's more than the other ones because it's a long race and you need to do a really good first beat. That's the point. The first beat is really important. Even the race take like 2 hours and a half or 3 hours.
And we saw yesterday that Maria set up twice with some port end bias. Should she be doing that again today?
Not so much as yesterday. She should put less bias in the pin.
After Allegri. Anyway, we're looking at the water. We've just under 5 minutes before the start. Hopefully we can join Jenny Tulloch on the water. Jenny, looking a little bit quieter today.
You know, it is very much quieter today. We came out about an hour ago and the cloud cover was covering the entire race course, and I think that's been affecting the heating on the land, so we haven't quite seen the sea breeze develop the way that it normally would. But the good news for race fans who want lots of breeze is that the clouds are literally just evaporating off of the race course. So kind of where we are and just behind us offshore, the clouds are dissipating, and it's going to be a beautiful afternoon again. And you can see even just with the last 10 minutes of the clouds going away, the breeze has built from what was almost maybe just 5 or 6 knots now to more like 8 or 9. And I think this will be a very quick build, as Afonso was saying earlier. It should be expected to build all afternoon. So we can hear Maria about to call the 4-minute gun, and the boats all have picked their jibs. I think probably everyone's still going for a light setup because, as he said, that first upwind is so important and so critical, even in a really long coastal race like this. Once you get ahead, it's a lot harder, I think, to fall back after that.
So, Afonso, Jenny just saying that she expects the breeze to build. Would you see that from what you can see in the on the clouds and in the water just now?
Yeah, the forecast said that
it's
going to build. It's only a question to clear the sky. The sky is getting clear now.
Yeah.
In one direction, the other one there is quite plenty of clouds. So I think it's going to build up. And I saw Platoon there, and I think they enjoy more this type of wind than the strong wind. I think they are stronger with lighter wind.
So, Jenny, Afonso saying that he reckons this could be Platoon's day. What's your thoughts on that? They've got some work to do if they're going to defend this world title.
I don't know about luck. I mean, we always say luck is a combination of training and patience, but I think it will be a different race course today because it is so much lighter than the past 2 days, and I think we could see teams that are doing a bit better in the Cascais events maybe start to do better here now. I mean, especially sled. They've had a great regatta so far, but we know that they are often really good in the coastal race. I think you can remind me on this, Andy, but I think they've won the past 2 coastal races in the last 2 events. So maybe there's something about the fire in their bellies for the longer race that means that team's a bit fired up. They're actually just in front of us right now on the umpire boat, and I think we'll see the fleet possibly a bit more spread out across this line because nobody necessarily knows which way to go.
That's right. And just talk to me a little bit about confidence, because the likes of Allegri are running on a little bit of a high. They're having their best regatta so far. Correspondingly, or conversely, Platoon not so good. How hard is it to turn your confidence round at this stage in the regatta and in this stage in the season to say this is the midpoint of the year?
You know, I think some of the teams, they'll say we take every day, each day as a new day. And so if you have that mentality, then it doesn't matter if you're at the front of the fleet or the back of the fleet. Each day is a new day. And I'm hoping that Platoon thinks that way, because for sure, as the reigning world champions, to be sitting so deep on the scoreboard and to have 2 bad races like they did yesterday, I think they had 2 6th and they're in 6th. So they're very much going to be saying, you know, guys, we can win this regatta. Let's go out here and win this race today and not think about how the scores have been going. And for them maybe it's a blessing in disguise that it's totally different conditions, because it is really a clean slate, and you can't think about the rest of the week, much less the rest of the series, if you just want to win one race.
Exactly. So, Jenny, we're at just at 1:20. Afonso, your thoughts on this start line at just under 1 minute to go. What do you think?
I think Allegra and Zura want to gain the pin. Zura tack away, try to have some space to Allegra, but Allegra are closing that gauge, so it will be tough for Azura.
And at the top of the end of the line, you've got Phoenix, Luna Rossa, and Platoon there. Jenny?
Yeah, we are actually just in that lineup here, underneath Platoon, Preventa, Luna Rossa. We've got about 40 seconds to go. I do think there'll be enough distance for Luna Rossa and Phoenix to get in here. Yesterday we saw a couple boats shut down at the boat in the line, but it doesn't look like Platoon is playing defense against those guys just yet. So I think we should have a pretty good start, and it looks really crowded down at the 10. So Azura, Onda, I actually can't see the boat to Lure, and I think it's Allegra. 20 seconds to go. That's kind of where the action is on the start line. But yeah, Luna Rossa accelerating here at the boat, Phoenix as well. Quantum is very close to the line already with 12 seconds to go. They have a good hold to lure it, and they're having to push their bow down because they're almost a touch early on. And I think Allegre might be struggling to be able to lay this in from underneath the rest of the boats. 2, 1 second, that's the gun there. And I'm going to say best start possibly for Luna Rossa here on the boat end. Sled in the middle. Sled thinks they can tack and cross this fleet to the right, I think, and Quantum to their left. So Sled and Quantum both going for the early tack on the port, and easily they will cross the boats on the right-hand side. So that's why it was so pressured up at the 10, because the 10 was just so favored that these guys, they can pull the Allegra from yesterday. They can tack and cross the fleet, and Quantum has definitely done that.
They have indeed. Not such a good start from Onda. A quick word about them today. Eduardo de Souza Ramos is unwell today, so is on shore, and it's young Marco Grail stepping into the hot seat. So huge encouragement for Marco. His first day steering a TP52 in the 52 Super Series. Got off to a reasonable start. He's got, of course, Robert Scheidt on his shoulder, and good friends, and I think they will have a spirited battle today. But Afonso, your thoughts of the start?
Yes, it was a really good start from Allegra and from Quanto, also Azura. It was a good start.
Azura more down towards the or up just under Allegra, aren't they?
Yes, but because they start later, so they start with less speed than Allegra. So Allegra start better because they won the pin at full speed and at the starting gun. So it was a really good start for Allegra. And more conservative was Quantum, that start more in the middle and exactly at the gun. But a really great start for Quantum also.
As you would expect from Dean Barker.
Yes, you should expect only the excellent things.
Exactly. So the battle at the top of the regatta standings is between Azura and Quantum. Allegra in the mix, and all three at the top of the table in this race so far. Allegra leading on this left side according to Virtual, Azura second, and Quantum third. Jenny.
Yeah, I think fair enough for Quantum to be kind of stamping a early lead on this race. Azura, I can't quite see out of my eye, but had a great lineup at the 10. We're able to kind of shove Allegre and Onda behind them, and I think those two boats are where the battle is. I was talking to Santiago Longa after yesterday's racing, the tactician on board Azura, and I asked him if they're paying attention to Quantum, because it definitely looks like Quantum is paying attention to Azura. We saw them tacking and defending against Azura in the final upwind of yesterday's race, and
you got an unequivocal reply.
The game already played. Santi said, the interesting thing was what he said. The first word out of his mouth was, personally, I'm not paying attention to Quantum, which makes you know that the rest of the boat maybe is
completely.
thinking about them, even if Santiago's trying to not play that game.
I think, but that's something that I think he brings across from his own sailing, from Olympic sailing, that a boat's a boat. You're not thinking about who your opposition is, and you're only thinking about your own performance. And he's really trying to bring that into the culture in Azura, I think, as much as anything, to try and start with a different approach to everything's against Quantum.
Exactly. And I think that's probably a very different way than Vasco used to sail on board Azura. I mean, I think we know the Azura Quantum rivalry has been going for years in the Super Series. Especially previous years. Yeah, this year everything's so close and everyone's so close. But previous years they were such standout teams that it made sense for that rivalry to be at the top and to have eyes on each other. And now Luna Rosa's in the mix with Vasco Vascoto on board, so you can never. Sled is always in the mix as well. And Platoon has had a bad week here, but is often up there also. So there's no counting anyone out. And Santiago's going, we got to keep everyone in mind. And Quantum's maybe going, they finally are seeing Azura bite at their heels a little bit this event, and they can remember that old rivalry in their bones, even if they are trying not to pay attention to it.
Yeah, of course, one of the things with that particular rivalry was as much about Terry Hutchison and Vasco, who the rivalry transferred from other classes over the course of a whole season, and they would be racing each other week in, week out. And I think that Terry probably saw more of Vasco than he did of his family, for example. But Afonso, your thoughts on this first beat? The right side should come in.
Yes. What's happening is when the wind is not already built, you need to. It's good to go right, but there is attention to the pressure, and sometimes there is more. It depends on position of the race course, but like it is now, there is a little bit more pressure on the left. So that little more pressure is much better, and sometimes go a little bit more left also when you are coming up. And that's what is happening now. The boats on the left, they start because it was bias on the pin again.
And now they're getting the extra pressure.
And they're getting the extra pressure or a little bit of lift.
Yeah.
That things happen. And they are gaining to the right side boats because they start behind and they have that less pressure, or they are not picking that small lift that sometimes happen.
And Alegre have a very experienced Portuguese sailor in their corner, and Gustavo Lima. He's the architect behind the scenes, is he?
that I don't know. I know that he's in the team. That's really good.
But he's done 25 years in these waters, the same as yourself, isn't he?
I'm a little bit older than him, but it's okay. That's right.
You can't tell.
And we saw Platoon. It doesn't look nice. I said it was a good day for him because it was lighter wind, but they are crossing behind. And Azura Tech, that's quite surprised. He has clear wind and he attacked to the left. Maybe they are seeing something that we are not seeing.
Maybe they're just trying to get out to this extra pressure offshore.
Can be, but they have a clear wind, a clear line, so when they attack to the left, so they think that something is coming from the left, and they are trying to go there because there is Platoon already attacked to the right, and Honda is going left, and he's not protecting Honda for nothing. So
exactly. So Jenny, what's your position on the course? What can you see?
We are right on the stern of Provenza, so underneath Alegre and Quantum Racing, checking out kind of the
middle right,
literally checking out the leads of Provenza's sail plan. But we've just seen, kind of as Alfonso was describing, we've seen the fleet get to the lighter pressure on this right-hand side, and the boats that were in a bad line took that as the moment to tack out. So the first one to tack out was Platoon, and you could see the disappointment there on Cascais' face. I think we talked earlier this week about how a venue like this, which is mostly one-sided, if not completely, there are teams that can kind of play in the middle of the right, but mostly one-sided, that this is an execution game. And I think a little bit Platoon has just not been able to execute their starts. We've been saying maybe that they're struggling with both speed up wind, but if you don't come off the start in that front row, then you're never in a position to show your boat speed.
But it tends to be a start line that you have to be a little, or in general, you have to be a little bit more extreme on. You either have to be in the committee boat and be going right early, or as we've seen with Alegre and Luna Rossa at different times, coming off the pin and going out to the left early and then crossing the fleet. And that's really not often in the Platoon game plan, is it?
No, the Platoon game plan is exactly
super
that.
Conservative.
Start middle, maybe kind of middle of the pack, and then pick off boats left and right with each shift. And a venue like this where you can't really pick the boats off in the shift if you're not at the top, then it's not the sort of game plan that'll make them world champions again.
Which is interesting because you would put Quantum in the same camp as far as risk reward. Terry Hutchison tends to be a little bit more risk averse, and as we saw that from their starting off the middle of the line, but they can chip their way up through the fleet. as they're doing quite nicely just now from that start.
And maybe he has confidence in Dean Barker's ability on the start line, no matter where he is. I think, particularly with match racing, the sort of thing that you learn is the exact perfect timing to get to exactly where you want to be at zero, and to know that Dean's done that almost his entire life, and to have confidence in your driver to be able to stay wherever you want, even if you're a conservative tactician in a way like Terry, to kind of say, yeah, okay, maybe we won't be the 10 most, so that was sort of Allegre, and that was sort of a zero, but we'll play down at the 10, and I trust that you'll be able to get us off the line. And I think not at all that John Cascais doesn't have that confidence in harm, but it is just a very different level, I think, to be able to assume that Dean can do exactly what you want.
But in the meantime, Jen, we're seeing Sled eking their way up the leaderboard from that right side, along with Phoenix out on that right, but Sled just nipping just slightly forward on the bow of Quantum. And after
just see them sailing into a little pressure line as well. So Sled's tacking now in that pressure line. It's kind of the perfect time to tack, because any further than that and you sail out of it, Quantum will seat across here. Sled's actually just leave out Phoenix, so they're forcing Phoenix out to what's maybe the lighter spot out of that pressure. And I think Quantum might face Sled and do the exact same thing here. We'll see in 1 second. They sent Shark Clarkson to Leeward, and then he eased the runner, and they're going for the tack. So Quantum's decided that this is the place that they want to be in this tough line, and Sled's having to go back out as well. And this is kind of the perfect time to play this game, because we're just getting towards the closeness to this lay line.
And Allegre coming in there, Afonso.
Yes.
Allegre going for a bit of a duck there. Sorry, apologies. Go ahead, Alfonso.
Yeah, go on, Afonso. Yeah, Allegre coming in, just having to go behind Quantum and in the middle of Sled.
Yes, looks like at the end is favor the right, and the right boats gain. And we don't know also about the speed, if Quantum is a little bit faster than Allegre.
I think that Sled generally have shown a good speed in the light to medium conditions. We're on board with Allegre just now.
Begins. Allegre jumped Quantum.
Is crossing
they went and hitched up onto Sled, and then Quantum actually
they are in the lay line, and they are squeezing, and Quantum is in the best position, because they are squeezing all the other boats.
So Quantum taking control, really?
Yes, taking control. It depends if how far away if they squeeze Allegre or not. If they are able to squeeze Allegre and squeeze the other three boats, they are in control. If not, if they are not in the lay line.
So what's Quantum trying to do just now, Afonso? Just sail a high mode and squeeze up to Allegre?
It looks by the virtual that they are in the lay line. They are already in the lay line, so you will go in VMG. If they are tight to the lay line, they will try to squeeze Allegre and squeeze the other three boats.
So Jenny, looking like these four boats up on lay line have the advantage just now.
I think they might actually keep lay line here. I think that's why Quantum went for this tack up, to basically give as much bad air for as long as possible to the guys behind them. And it's working already. I mean, they really planted a close leeward lee bow, because they couldn't kind of get any closer to Allegre than that, and they've already now pulled out 2/3, 3/4 of the boat length. So each of these boats just doing exactly that, giving the tiniest bit of wash to the boat behind them. So Allegre's done the same. They pulled out about 3/4 of boat length on Sled, and Phoenix was overlapped with Sled beforehand, overlapped by about halfway up there the boat, and now they're off the stern as well. So we should continue to see those leads gain for each boat, to the boat behind just a little bit, and it's probably still a 1/4 of a mile to the top mark. So that'll be Quantum looking in really good placement. I almost want to say they maybe have overstood here. Soon we might see them cracking off sheets, actually. So I think Luna Rosa and the guys inside, there's a little tacking duel here. I'm seeing Azura just leave out Provenza. And they didn't really execute very well. They might get rolled by Provenza, in fact. That was an unforced error there by Guillermo Prada. I think we'll have to keep a close eye on that, but yeah, it looks like Provenza's just rolling over to the top, so I'm not sure whether they thought they were crossing and had to go for a late last second tack, but it was not a good decision. And then Luna Rossa hasn't come back up yet because they don't really have a good left shift to come into this fleet. So instead, they're going to hold off for as long as possible, see how far overstood these guys are. I mean, I think they will have to crack sheets a little bit out here on the starboard ley line, and so Luna Rossa can decide later on when to come and play.
So at the moment, a little bit of a split then with the top four back to Luna Rossa by the looks of things. But getting out to the starboard tack ley line has been the key so far, Afonso.
Yes, the key is the right ley line, and looks at the boats already overstood the ley line, so they go in the top four boats with MG fast, and the other ones they will approach the top mark more from the left, not from the right, because they don't want to pick the dirty air from that 4 or 5 boats that are over ley line now.
So Jenny, looking difficult just now for Azura. Azura are second on the ROLEX TP52 World Championship leaderboard, and they're now in 8th just now. Conversely, looking quite good for Allegra in second to Quantum.
Yeah, I mean, I think unfortunately for Azura, they couldn't really capitalize on what had been a good start, and they haven't really made it out to this favored right-hand side. Even Onda, who had not a great start, I think by getting further right early is going to be able to pass probably the 4 boats on the left. The interesting part is, as we get up to the top mark here, the breeze is really much lighter. We have probably just about 6 knots on the water now, and there's very obvious puffs and lulls, and the guys on the left at the moment are in more of a lull than the guys on the right. So even if they're overstood on the right and they're sailing a little bit of extra distance, they've got more power to do it and more pressure to do it, and I think they're going to just keep making gains over those boats on the left. I'm not sure if Onda will have the rest of the fleet after all, but I don't really know what happened with Azura. Having to tack up that left-hand side did not go well for them.
No, it didn't. So we're approaching the windward mark, Afonso. You can see the breeze. What would you be doing downwind after this? Very patchy. It's about wind pressure, isn't it?
Yes, it's about wind pressure. It looks that jibing looks it's a good possibility. The jib, because looks that the wind went quite righty by the virtual. They changed because they were close by the ley line and they overstood the ley line. That's what's look. One thing that should be interesting is next time if you have in the virtual the numbers that they have in the boat, then we can play a little bit more. We
can see that. We can play with that later on. Yeah. But Jenny, we're talking about jibe set, perhaps.
Sorry, Andy, say again.
We're just talking perhaps jibe set in this right-hand breeze.
Yeah, I think that would be the move. I mean, it's difficult when it's so light and the whole fleet has just sailed through here to decide where the right line is for where all their bad air is versus where the most breeze is on the course. But I definitely think middle right here, there's definitely more breeze than the left right now. And as it's getting so much lighter again, it's all about the pressure. As you guys said, it's kind of time for the strategists to really have their eyes out of the boat, tell the tacticians where they...
5 minutes.
The racing just rounded. Good, solid.
So yeah, Quantum then leading round the top mark with Allegra second, Sled round in third, Phoenix in fourth. So the four boats that got out to that starboard tack ley line earliest. Coming round, Provezza just in a little bit of trouble tacking inside Luna Rossa. So that's Phoenix going through in fourth. Then next round is Luna Rossa. Provezza, I think, just getting in there with Onda behind them. So these two boats managed to tack up to Onda's line. Looking at Allegra coming round the mark, chasing Quantum Racing, and Afonso, Quantum Racing jibe setting as we expected.
Yes, I think it's a good move from them, and also the Allegra. I think it's to take the shift that was in that part of the race course.
So we're just watching Phoenix jibe setting as well, Jenny.
You know, all of these jibe sets have been executed beautifully so far. Yesterday we saw a couple mess ups the first day in the big breeze especially had some crew maneuver errors, and I think it's much easier in light air, of course, but it doesn't mean it's always going to go perfectly. So just watching to see if there's any little niggles here and there, and hasn't been. Everyone's done really good job so far. Honda, in fact, getting their kite up and pulling even before the offset mark. That was the sort of things I was expecting possibly the leaders to do. Unfortunately, they're just not getting it trimmed as perfectly as we'd like. And then the second last boat, Azura, and last boat around Platoon. So Platoon really struggling to get it together as they're off the start line in a great spot. It's not an easy race course to catch up, and I think Luna Rossa might be feeling the same as well. We thought maybe they would be in a good position, but they apparently those 2 boat lengths or 4 boat lengths from being at the boat end versus the pin end is sort of the difference between being Quantum Racing or being Luna Rossa right now, and I think we all know who we'd rather be at this point.
So Platoon have got some work to do. Of course, they didn't finish so well in Zadar. We spoke with Harm Muller-Speer before this regatta, saying he was very disappointed and hoped that they'd start here with a clean slate. But have some work to do to get back into the upper echelons of this fleet. As indeed do Azura, so looking good just now for Allegri, and Sled pretty solid for the overall for this season. Jenny, we're just at the midpoint of the season today. In fact, 2.5 regattas in and a 5 regatta season. Any particular thoughts on what we're seeing just now?
You know, I think we can start to speculate about that. I think the sailors again should probably just be keeping the World Championships and each day and racing on their minds. But I do think we've seen Quantum Racing do a pretty solid season so far. I think they have a good team in Dean Barker and Terry. When Doug DeVos is on board, Dean steps into the strategist role himself, and it seems like that dynamic works out well as well. It's cool to see that they can do so well with a new helmsman right off the bat, and yet I also think it's really fun to see the new team of Luna Rossa to be up there as well. They just won the last event in Zadar, and that's a completely new dynamic on board with Bruni driving, and then Vasco Vascoto calling tactics, and Jimmy Spinhill sitting in the strategist role. And I'm sure that that's a different role than he's done in ages. He's used to having, well, not a tiller, a wheel in his hands, but to see their dynamic working out as well, I think is really fun and engaging. And yet we know Azura can always play in the game, and they were tied on the first day for the lead. They're only 2 points behind right now. Anyone can have a bad race, and if this is their bad race, fine, but there's still plenty more. There's a 20-mile race course out here with this coastal race, so even if we're only 2 miles into it now, they've got 18 miles to go to try to chip away, and that team particularly has the boat speed and the boat handling, the crew maneuvering to do it. We've seen that so far, not even just this year. We've seen that in all the years that Azura sails. So I think you can imagine that those are the main players for the series title, but Sled, as we've said, is the only team that's been consistently on the podium the last 2 events, and as we speak, they're on the podium of this race. So I think it'd be really fun to see a team like that come into the mix, and overall they might be a bit further away on the scoreline, but it doesn't mean it's over yet. There's still 2.5 more regattas to go. Nice
images then of Quantum leading from Allegri, and there's not really too many options down this run, Afonso, is there?
No, I think it's getting quite difficult. What it will be interesting to see it was how many boats Azura can go up. I think it will be quite interesting to see, because it's, like I said, it's a long race, but when the wind is still open, so let's see what Azura is going to do, because they need to go really forward, because this place, I think yesterday it was not a good place for them, and they need to make efforts and try to take out from the head something and to go forward. They need to arrive at top 3 or 4 at least. If not, it will be really difficult to catch the other ones.
So, Afonso, while we've got you, we love being here in Cascais. It's a very, very active club. I think we've got 25 or 30 kids learning to sail in their program here through the summer. Tell us a little bit about that.
About the club, this club is the club that has more races in Portugal. All the big events are here. And the organization is really good because the club is really used in the last 10 years to do all of the big events. The World of Desaf was here. So, and the kids, it's because of the tourism, because it's so nice Cascais that there is plenty of families that come here to pass holidays and also living. And we are close by to Lisbon. It's 25 minutes by car. There is highway to there. And lots of foreign people start living in Cascais and also in holidays, and they pick the kids and put in the club. So it's really interesting, because if you want to be a coach in the club, the first thing that
There's
they
a good
ask,
job for you.
the first thing that they ask is if you speak language.
Yeah.
If you only speak Portuguese, you are not allowed to be a
No,
coach
but of
here.
course, and what's nice downstairs is we see all these kids learning in different classes, and they're French, Italian, English, Portuguese as well. It's very multicultural, and they all get along, and they're all racing and sailing different boats.
Yes, it's true, and also Sweden people here, and it's amazing the multicultural kids that we have here, and also the facilities that we have.
And you've still got some young athletes come here to train in the Olympic classes as well. We can see there's 49ers and 29ers from different countries.
Yes, they like there is this is a spot that lots of teams choose to come here especially during the winter. But now it's summer, but it's special during the winter because usually in the summer they are doing championships to train and make their training camps here.
Yeah,
and it's really nice because.
And of course, it's very close to Lisbon in terms of communication and travel.
Yes, it's close to Lisbon, so we have direct flights to Lisbon from everywhere in Europe and also outside of Europe. So it's really good for them to come to Cascais.
And how important is it to have the World Championship here for Cascais?
I think it's really important. It's not only the World Championship; it's also because it's sponsored by Rolex.
Yeah,
and that it's really nice that we have the event of Rolex in Portugal. Because usually when you go to France, you go to Italy, you go to major countries of sailing, and then in Cascais
there's a little bit of extra credo with it being Rolex.
Yes, it's totally different. The World and the Rolex World Championship. It was really proud for the club.
Great, Afonso, a real pleasure to have you in the studio. We'll speak to you again later on. We're going to have Nick Baird will join us again. Thank you, Afonso.
Thank you for your invitation. I enjoyed the race.
Thank you. So Allegra and Sled. I'm just looking at Allegra coming downwind there. Quantum easing ahead. I think over 150 metres of lead just now from Allegra and Sled. Jenny, how's the breeze looking?
I think the breeze, the funny thing is it's just filled in very nicely in about the last, right as they were all diving, and I think possibly the biggest gainer on this downwind will be Phoenix. Seemed to see the breeze earlier and dive sooner, and I think perhaps the other three boats, Allegra and Sled, have gone a little too far past the ley line. Now that the breeze is in, they can sail a little bit deeper and stay the same speed. So we should see Phoenix at least maybe get in the mix here with Sled, and you could see onboard Sled Adam Bichel kind of running around and looking around behind him and yelling at the guy, not yelling, speaking to his team. And maybe that's it. It's a very different game plan than the very first half of the speed, which was much lighter, and you can see bodies have moved back in the boats and onto grinders a bit more now than they were earlier. It's almost probably 10 knots. We're even seeing some white caps now. It could be 12, so a good pressure line's come through.
So Jenny, just explain the course to us. We haven't managed to get a graphic up as yet. The course was changed at the last minute from course 4 to course 5. In essence, what is the course?
So the problem was it was so much lighter than expected. Course 4 was going to be I think a 30-mile slog that if we had the breeze we thought it would have been 4 hours. And so coming out here and only having 6 knots, Maria changed to course 5, which is only 20 miles. It's this first windward leeward section that we're having now, and then they round the leeward gate and they go out to what's another mark to windward, basically off of Cabarassa, which I've been told means the flat cape. So that's the cape just to weather of our windward mark now, and it's just south of Cabo de Rocca, which everyone in sailing knows as the westernmost point of continental Europe. It's a big point, only about 20 miles north of us, but they'll probably just see that peeking out the corner as they get to Cabo de Rosa and round it. Then they leave it, a mark there, they leave it to port, they go out to another mark much further downwind from here, and then they'll come back upwind to a finish line near the start line. So a good long afternoon, still 18 more miles, or now it's probably about 16 more miles of sailing, but beautiful now that the breeze has picked up to see it.
So Nick, we've got...
Speaking of the bottom mark.
Sorry, go on, Jen.
We've got Quantum's around. They've got about 7 boat length lead now, so great downwind sailing for those guys. Extended on Allegra, who rounds in second behind Quantum to the same mark. And Sled, interestingly, is picking to round the opposite mark. So they're going to round, turning right, going to the left-hand side of the race course. Probably we will see them tack soon, but at least they won't have the bad air of the whole fleet as they come down. Phoenix has gotten into fourth. They haven't made as big a gain on Sled as I thought we were going to see of them, but a good rounding heading out the same side to this right side as Allegra and Quantum. Behind them, Luna Rosa, almost simultaneous jibe rounding, but is rounding the same side as Sled. So Luna Rosa has a little bit more faith in that left-hand side. And then a good lineup here, Provezza, Azura, and Onda. I think Provezza and Azura might be tied. Onda going for the very early drop. So Onda, who was behind Azura, dropped their kite about 4 seconds earlier than Azura did. And I probably think it's a bit too early. But you know what? When you've got a boat in front of you like that, there's no reason to go super fast. You have to just round wide of them. So Provezza, Azura rounding simultaneously. Provezza to the far left, Azura to the right. Onda rounding just behind Azura. And then bringing up the rear, we have Platoon still with the kite up, aimed to that right mark for the right side.
So Nick, things looking pretty good for Quantum on this upwind. It looks to be fairly one-sided, a little bit processional on this 20-mile coastal race.
Yeah, well, you know, all the teams would have been talking this morning about how important that first leg was, and you know, the order of the rounding in the first mark is going to be very important, and likely going to be the order that a lot of the boats are going to stay in, especially the first couple and the last couple. You know, it's going to be hard for them to make a lot of changes in place here.
I think with the longer downwind, do you think there might be some opportunities there, Jen?
Yeah, I do think we could see some changes on the downwind. I mean, particularly now that the breeze is in and is filled across the course, it's not as obvious anymore which side will be favored. We know the past 2 days we've seen both sides pay. We've seen the inside pay most of the time, but we've also seen Platoon went from 7th or 9th to 2nd one day using the outside straight set. So it kind of is anyone's game on the downwind, and I think perhaps there's still some moves to be made. I mean, for sure, Sled and Phoenix are very close to each other. We saw Provezza and Azura rounding simultaneously, and Luna Rosa is sort of in the mix back there as well. So the one team that can feel a bit confident is Quantum. They've got everybody in line behind them. They're leading the parade like a band leads his bandmates of a parade, and I think they just have to keep their eye on Allegra at the moment, but otherwise they'll be feeling comfortable.
Yeah, when we spoke with Andrea earlier on, he was saying that they might see some compression at the bottom of the run as we get into the current, and the breeze might be lighter as you get down towards the river. So there's always the chance of some catching up then. But meantime, we're looking at Onda, presently in 8th. To say a big role today for Marco Grail, stepping into the helmsman position. Eduardo de Souza Ramos having a day off on account of his not feeling tip-top today. So we hopefully we believe Eduardo will be back with us tomorrow. We did speak with Marco Grail just before he went in the water. Interestingly enough, Robert Scheidt said, "Don't put any pressure on my boy." But this was Marco Grail before he went on the water. So Marco, big opportunity for you today. What are you going to do?
Just keep it simple. It's going to be a big crew change in the boat. I mean, it's not good to change everything and not have at least one sail test before a race. But then I think it's all part of the game. You have to be ready for the opportunities you're given. So I'm really happy for it.
He went in the water. Jenny, he's not doing too bad a job all in all, is he, Marco Grail, on the helm of the Onda?
I mean, it's fabulous to see him get an opportunity like this. We know that the children of Torben, both of them. So Martina also a gold medal in the Rio Olympics, and then she got the opportunity to go and sail in the Volvo Ocean Race and do a lot of driving there herself. And Marco's a fabulous guy. We saw him step up as the ambassador for sustainability for their team. He really does want to lead efforts like that. He was talking the other day about, I mean, we all know how dirty the waters of Rio were. That was a huge media story, but also he personally feels like Brazil needs to do a better job, and he likes that aspect of the 52 Super Series a lot, and he's trying to lead by example on that team, and I think that's fabulous as a young guy to be making that effort. But also, I saw him putting their GoPro on the back of the boat yesterday to be able to look out for training over the night. So I think he's doing the small things that he can, and he's being rewarded by being given the helm of the boat today, and I think he's a fabulous person to have that as well. I mean, as a 49er helmsman himself, he definitely has the skills to do what they need on board, and it'll just be about learning what 52 is like. And you know, they're not sitting last at the moment today. There's a very experienced team behind them, so good on those guys.
And indeed, in chasing Azura and Provezza, not too far ahead of them, but he's got some pretty good genes and a great mentor in Robert Scheidt.
I think you almost couldn't ask for a better mentor in Robert Scheidt, someone with 5 gold medals. Well, perhaps a better mentor.
Is his dad? You certainly wouldn't want to have all the medals on board the boat, because that would certainly weigh you down, wouldn't it? Between the two of them, between Torben and Robert Scheidt, it's incredible, isn't it?
The heavy boat with medals.
Anyway.
The only other thing about this race course and the compression we might see is to go all the way up to Cabo de Raza is a much further upwind than we've seen so far, and we might then really see this side of the course. We were calling it the zipper yesterday because that's what Andy Horton had described it as, but we might see the zipper start to come into effect, and how far, now that there's breeze out here on the right, on the course, how far in do you have to go where the breeze then dies, and who's going to be able to play the tacks along the coastline the best? And I think that is an interesting task that's coming up that we haven't really seen yet.
It'll be interesting. I think maybe the one to watch there is possibly Onda furthest out to the left, whether they can pick up some extra breeze as they get up towards this top mark. But my memory is as you get into the bay at Cabo Raso, then you get this much more pronounced starboard tack lift, and you want to get quite into that bay, but it is can be quite erratic in there as you're close to land.
Yeah,
but,
some of the
yeah, but the downwind is very different, and I think there's probably some big gains to be made downwind, just not saying where.
Yeah, well, some of the talk on the dock yesterday about what the coastal race course was going to be like, and if they did choose this course, it was sort of laughing about the fact that the boats are going to want to go so far into the beach that the surfers are more in the further out in the ocean than the boats are, and the only question is get so far in, but be careful of the breaking waves because they can drag you into the beach. So
yeah,
wouldn't be surprised to see most of these guys going as far towards shore as they can go.
So pretty solid for Phoenix just now, Jenny. We haven't really seen them shining so far this regatta. I think the lighter breeze setup is maybe good for them, and they also got right early on.
I think, as we know, the right pays early on, and the pen paid at the start. So to be able to execute that perfectly is kind of what's winning these races. And now we'll see. It's going to be about boat handling and tacking, and how many tacks to lay this right coastline. Do you just go in once and tack out and you're done and you go towards the mark, or is it a multiple tack along the coast, sort of San Francisco Bay style with the current? And I think teams might play this differently. Quantum has put the first tack in. The way Andy described it the other day was as right as you dare. But actually it looks like the breeze continues all the way to the coast today. So as the clouds have crossed over, actually Quantum's just going for their second tack. So yeah, we can see this tacking duel, even if it's with themselves, up the coast.
Yeah, probably just a little bit of a hitch up to cover there and just make sure none of the other boats get too much leverage.
That's right. Azura doing the same thing, I think, just trying to get out from underneath Luna Rossa. Not sure that they would cross Provezza though, would they? Pretty close with the two of them.
I know we've seen this time and again, the leaders just sort of
Able to
deciding to go back into the middle of the fleet and tack on the second place boat and force them to do 2 more tacks, and just stirring up a little bit of trouble back there. So we'll see, like right now on top of sled, making sled decide, do they stick to the bottom or do a double tack. Probably going to see 2 tacks here, and everybody losing distance on the leaders here, so good move by Quantum.
Yeah, Zara just did, as you said, Andy, they were crossing Preveza waited till a last second to do a duck, and then right as they'd fully board away, Zara faced an attack onto them and forced Preveza out to the left. So it is just a bit of protecting the right with some protective tacks, and that's what we've seen up top as well. Quantum planted on Allegra double tack to get clear. They, in their double tack, planted on Sled, who's now double tacked out, and they've tacked onto Luna Rosa, who's tacking out. So it's like a domino effect on this coastline of just getting clean air, going back to the right, getting clean air, going back to the right.
Yeah, well, that's how it ends up working, right? Because the guy, the tacks in front of you hits you, and you want to tack away, but then there's a boat behind your boat that you don't want them to get to the right of you. So like you said, Jenny, just a domino effect there. And boats like Phoenix, who are down below, are going to make quite a bit of gain with everybody else tacking.
So if you've got any questions over the course of this coastal race, do post them on our social media channels. I think we've got one coming in on Twitter. And there's a question for you, Nick. What's the when you're forced to lee bow or duck, how's that used tactically, and when do you make the choice?
Yeah, so the way the rules work is the starboard tack boat, or the boat that is with all the guys on the right side of the boat looking towards the bow. It is going to have right of way over the port tack boat. So Quantum here on port tack, and the starboard tack boat's going to have right of way over them and force the other boats to choose to lee bow or duck.
So lee bow means?
Lee bow is going to mean that you're tacking underneath them. So if Quantum were tacking underneath another starboard boat right now, they would be doing a lee bow tack, and that's powerful if you have a long way to go on that tack. It puts pressure on the boat to windward of you, or
because you disturb their air. Yeah.
Yep, you disturb their air,
and they're forced to tack off, or you. So the choice is you lee bow or you duck. When do you duck and when do you lee bow?
Well, it depends on exactly how far forward you are on the boats.
Exactly.
If you're almost crossing, then you're going to lee bow more often than not. If you're nowhere close to crossing, then you're going to duck. If you're in the middle, the choice usually is, do we have a long way on starboard, or do we have a long way on port? If it's a long way on port, you'll duck, starboard, lee bow, or if you want the right side and you want to get to the right of that boat, you duck, left side, you lee bow. So it's only 2 options, but it can be pretty complicated to decide which one to choose. So sailing is very, very much like that. It's a simple sport, yet it's extremely complicated.
Indeed. As I say, any questions, then do post them on our social media channels. We'll try and answer them over the course of this race, which threatens to be quite a long day, but good to see the breeze is holding up there nicely. We're just looking at the Allegra there, just converging with the road out to Guinshaw, out of Cascais, heading west.
Yeah, well, a little bit of a change up here. I mean, so we saw all those domino effects of boats tacking, Quantum hitting Allegra hitting Sled, and so on. And, the one boat that was able to stay without tacking and stay in clear air was Phoenix, and they've jumped up the leaderboard 1 spot and put about 50 or 60 meters on Sled here.
We're just seeing them closing in between Sled and Allegra. So Phoenix up to 3rd. Hasso-Plattner steering this week.
Yeah, so not surprising to see them putting the tack in front of Sled here and just protecting that right side, forcing Sled to go out. Likely going to hit Luna Rosa now and just create another one of those domino effects.
But Preveza not too far out of it really there. If anything, getting a little bit of extra pressure, a little bit of a lift there perhaps. Certainly managing to hold clear air. Sorry, go on, Jen.
The breeze has really built in the last 20 minutes. I mean, from what was 5 knots on that downwind is now almost maybe 15 knots. So we're seeing the finally the afternoon sea breeze coming in with strength, and we can continue to see this build throughout the afternoon, I think. So the interesting part is they're all going to be uprange of the sails that they had set, and just to see who can play the best and who can then trim the best for the situation. I mean, it's white capping fiercely now, and I think that's a very, very different scenario than what we had about 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, well, the challenge there is, every team's going to make different decisions on which sails to pick, and they're only really going to pick one for the duration of the course. But like you said, Jenny, you could have 5 or 15 knots, different wave states at different points. So it's a challenging decision, and you'll see that the teams with a little bit fuller jibs that went down a code might have some issues trimming the main as the slots sort of closed out, and the way that they adapt to that is going to be who goes faster in this race.
So we're on board with Allegri as they go through their attack. I think we've got another question coming through from Luke on YouTube, who's asking what's the black thing at the bottom of the luff of the kite and the lazy spinnaker sheet is caught on. And I think that's to just controls the lazy spinnaker sheet so it doesn't drop out of control. I think that's what we're talking about.
Well, you'd have to give me a shot of the downwind again to check it out, and then maybe we could answer that. But I'm not exactly sure what we're talking about.
And the other question, which was somebody was asking where Gladiator and where Paprec are. So as we explained previously, it's obvious it's a 5-event circuit, but not everybody wants to do all 5 events of the 52 Super Series, and there's the option to dip in and dip out. And in the case of Gladiator racing in Newport, where they have 3 TP52s, Tony Langley does, and so he's racing one of his other TP52s in Newport. He's raced the other one in Cowes in the Round the Island race. So that's his personal choice, and Paprec have chosen to not do this event, but will race at Copa del Rey, which is a particular favourite of the owners, not a circuit event. And a lot of owners obviously are time poor, as it were. They have businesses to run, and so they can't commit to more than 4 or 5 weeks of racing a year. And in the case of Paprec, then one of his choices is to do Copa del Rey. He enjoys the atmosphere, enjoys the racing, and it fits with his holiday plans. So there's Platoon in company with our Rolex guests on the boat to the right there, I think, our media boat to the left.
Yeah, well, it's beautiful out there for us and for the guests out
there. The VIP guests, yeah, it's one of these money can't buy days, where they get to see the racing up close and personal and enjoy the day. We have a very chic and comfortable little sailors' lounge, exclusive, just set up on the dock, and the Rolex guests and other guests from our different sponsors on the 52 Super Series come and enjoy a day here in Cascais. Meet some of the sailors, see the boats, go out in the water and enjoy the racing. So Jenny, Phoenix up to 3rd by the looks of things, as Nick was saying, getting through sled. So excellent work from Ed Baird.
Very, very close battle between those two, though. They've just tried to face sled, but I think they weren't quite up to speed yet out of their previous pack. So they've got a little extra distance, and now we're rolling over, reaching a little bit harder to give sled that air, but it is a tight battle between those two. But Ed will be very happy to get into the podium spots, and I think we could see disappointment on Tony Ray's face, strategist on board sled earlier. We were just trailing them, and he kind of looked around, and it's just the feeling of losing one boat when you're at the top. It's so much harder than losing a boat, say, from 6th to 7th or 7th to 8th. When you go from 3rd to 4th, it really hurts. It's like going from 1st to 2nd is the most painful of everything.
That's right. Same as at the Olympics, 4th is the toughest position. Dropping off the podium at any stage in the race is always painful. But there's a lovely shot of Quantum with, as I say, the main road in the background. They're going out to Guinshaw, the famous surf spot, just about 4 kilometres from where Quantum are, and Quantum pretty close to that shore. Obviously, the lens foreshortens things, but Terry Hutchison looking for that starboard tack lift along the shore, aren't they?
Yeah, well, you basically
they're looking really comfortable as well with the majority of their tacks. I mean, the only thing that can really go wrong here in a tack is a override, a bad override on the jib, and having to stop your tack and pull it back. And I think most of these teams are way too good for that, but you can never say never. It's when you're throwing 20 tacks out in a row and everyone's getting tired, and the potential for the lines to get sloppy in the boat becomes there, then that's kind of the one issue that we might just watch for. And it doesn't look like Quantum's got any sort of issues like that, but nobody has so far, so we're keeping eyes out. Sled finally getting up to maybe have a piece of Phoenix here. Sled is doing a widely bow of Phoenix, or sort of a sideways tack to Phoenix. So I think small game there for Sled.
Yeah, well, Sled doing a really interesting thing there. I mean, we couldn't quite see as we were following Quantum, but Phoenix in front of them on port, and like Jenny said, maybe not quite faced, but Phoenix in a strong position when Sled tack back on the starboard to go in front of them, but Sled tack away before Phoenix can get up to speed and hit them. So nice job on Sled to keep clear of the Phoenix guys and stay in that race.
The problem for Phoenix now is they've just been faced by Allegre, and there's nowhere to go. That beach is very, very close to us at the moment, so there's no more double tacking out of the transport for these guys. I don't see any surfers in you guys, though. I'll keep my eye out.
It's a little bit further around the corner before you get to surf country.
Well, I said there's no more space for tacking, but Phoenix has gone for it anyway. So they really are playing the San Francisco game. How close are the closest rocks? They're the ones that you don't hit.
Well, from what I've heard, it seems like you really can go all the way in, and then the depth isn't the problem. It's actually just the breaking waves.
So how far did Quantum have to go to the mark, Jen?
We can't actually. Oh, we can't see the mark. Quite a ways still.
Right.
About quarter of a normal upwind.
A quarter of a normal upwind, so half a mile.
Half a mile, yeah.
About 2,148 meters, I would say.
That's exactly the right answer.
Roughly. But Quantum doing exactly what they have to do, just keep the fleet in check. Keep going back to the shore to use that starboard tack lift, and the battle is behind them, isn't it?
Quantum has such a good position that they can make their tacks a bit longer, so they can sacrifice a little bit more of this right side, but they also don't have to do so many tacks, so they don't lose so much space in the maneuvers. And while the rest of the guys behind all keep tacking on each other, and then having to tack into shore to get clear air because they've just been tacked on. They're gaining when they get to the right, but they're losing every time that they tack. So the Quantum should be ultimately making bigger gains here, just because their little sidestep maneuvers aren't quite as little. And so each time the other boats do 2 tacks to Quantum 0, they're going to make probably a 3 boat length gain there. And I think that's what we've seen. I mean, the surprising part here is Allegre's dropped back so much compared to Phoenix. So somewhere in there, Phoenix and Hasselplatten are possibly doing a better job driving through the tacks, or they're just calling each little shift slightly better. But I think Phoenix has done a phenomenal job to kind of be fighting for that second place now instead.
So as I said, this is very much the midpoint of the season just now. 2.5 regattas into the 5 regatta year. And at the moment, Quantum Racing have still got that. Well, actually, they've extended their lead quite nicely to 14 points over the course of the regatta so far. They came in with 4 points, so they've made 10 points so far on Sled. Platoon have dropped back very slightly. Luna Rossa in 4th on 101, Allegre 110, same as Azura. Phoenix in 7th on 120, Prevezza in 8th on 133, Onda 136. Gladiator and Paprec a little bit further behind, obviously not doing this regatta, so they get 40 points apiece for not starting. But interesting, Nick, the battle all the way through the fleet. You see Prevezza and Onda battling each other. not too far ahead is Phoenix, and then Allegri and Azzurra close together in points. Luna Rossa chasing. It's pretty open, other than Quantum moving ahead at the top, isn't it?
Yeah, well, and Quantum having a good series and Sled as well, but definitely any event can certainly turn into a 60-point event for any of these teams. So you really got to keep battling to the end, and it's a tough fleet, and it's easy to get a few ninths in a row, and that can make a big difference. That's
right. I think Platoon are a little bit with their backs to the wall just now. But we spoke to quite a number of different navigators and sailors just about this kind of mid-term report, their expectations going into the season, and how do they feel at this point in the season. So that was just over the course of yesterday and this morning, and everybody fairly positive.
We started a bit slow, and just in general, not one thing, but just working away at it all. But it's coming nicely, and we're starting to sail better, and the pieces are starting to fall in place. So I'm happy with the progress we're making. And you start where you start, and you just have to get as good as you can be.
What will be your target for the season then from now?
Any podium would be pretty awesome. There are a lot of really good teams. So, just keep chipping away and doing as good as we can, and it'll fall into the right places.
How does that compare with your school report?
My school report, yeah. If Andy worked harder at it, he'd do a lot better.
He would be a pro sailor.
The only thing I worked at was sailing. That's the problem.
Great, perfect. Thanks, Andy.
I think we are pretty much where we were expecting to be. We are still in the hunt for the overall win. Definitely we can be in the top 3. It's not easy. I mean, we have Quantum, Platoon, Azzurra. They are all very close. Probably Quantum has a good edge now, but I think the season is still pretty long, and we are definitely on our way up.
Typically, what were your reports like at school from your teachers? What would they say about Francesco Bruni?
Okay.
What would they say?
Well, they would say still on a promising perspective.
Just like Luna Rossa.
Exactly.
We feel like, as we thought in the first part of the season, will be a really, really tough season because the team's getting stronger. And for us, with a completely different boat than the other ones, with a Pro League one, we still discover things about the boats, and we need to improve a lot. So it's a tough season, but we're still there. That is important. We are not really ahead at the moment, but I think we're still in the points, and we're still in the game, and we need to work every day, step by step. And still 2 events to come, and we finish this event and then 2 more events, and will be a lighter events that for us maybe is much better. And I think we need to still thinking about working every day, learning, and maybe in Valencia will be the moment that they start to thinking about points or things, but we need to improve every day.
What's the report for Sled? How do you feel?
Well, we feel pretty good about this first half of the season. We know that consistency is the important thing to get through and have a nice result at the end. So we feel good, and on average we have been strong. So it's a good feeling, I may say.
And how do the Quantum Racing team feel?
Pretty good. It's been a difficult season so far. I mean, we're leading the series, but you wouldn't think so in our camp. Everybody we feel we need to be better, make better decisions, go a little bit faster, and we're just working hard just to get better every single day.
And how's it been compared to your expectations at the beginning of the season?
I'm not sure. We always expect to win every race and every beat and every leg, and so when we don't, sometimes it feels like the whole world's falling apart, but in hindsight, once you get done with it, you watch how well the fleet's sailing. It's pretty good out there, and we're holding our own, and I wouldn't change our positions with anybody in the fleet.
The reports on Ed Reynolds.
Oh, the reports on Ed Reynolds. I don't know.
What did the teacher say about Ed Reynolds?
Well, I know one thing. When I went to my high school counselor about my senior year, she told me, she goes, college isn't for everyone. So you might want to join the service. I was like, really? So I don't think they were overly impressed with me in high school.
You've done okay.
Yeah, it seems it's working out. I mean, nobody's throwing me out yet, but yeah, I think I'm quite satisfied with the way it's turned out.
Who I think caught some kind of pot or something and have had to slow right down.
Well, we said the only thing bad that happened here was an override and a chip sheet, but I'd forgotten about all the crab hats and this race course. And in the middle of that video, the Luna Rossa team suddenly started backing down, and then someone stripped and went swimming. And yeah, I think the assumption is something got caught on their keel. Whether it was a crab pot, we couldn't quite see, but they are now finally back up and sailing again. But they have lost the entire fleet. And it's a blessing in disguise for the platoon, who has really not been able to catch up at all. And instead now Luna Rossa as well out back. So a very unfortunate situation there. And it must have not been marked because they pretty much have guys hiking out over the side looking at the bow all the time anyway. So either it was just slightly underwater or they didn't see it. It's fluid. It's unclear, but that's going to really hurt them.
It is indeed, after that problem on race 1 where they didn't manage to start because they had a problem with their hydraulics. So not Luna Rossa's week. Just very briefly to explain, we had to change the batteries on their primary camera on board. So we unfortunately just missed that live, but Luna Rossa have lost out a little bit. Otherwise, no big changes at the front of the fleet. We're back on board with Allegri. Nice images, yeah.
There's no big changes yet, but Phoenix is still punching towards Allegri's weight right now. So Phoenix is to leeward on starboard tack and slightly bow forward. And I think when they do tack over, Allegri will still have them, but not by much at all anymore. So really good charge here for the South African team to come up from fourth all the way to fighting for second hard on this upwind. Meanwhile, Quantum's going for their last double tack into the top mark there. They had finally understood the ley line for once, and they're doing a little double tack right at the end, but they've extended into a solid, probably 10 boat length lead here over Allegri.
Indeed, Allegri second, Phoenix up to third, about 30 metres or so ahead of Sled now. Prevetsa chipping away. And as you said, Jen, Luna Rossa's misfortune is a little bit of a bonus for platoon just now. Still looks fairly light coming up to this mark compared to what we saw on the first day, Nick, yeah?
Yeah, definitely.
They've really been phasing up and down. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, no, I mean, it looks a bit lighter. You can tell us more about it, Jen, from up there. But I think once you get around that corner, it actually gets a lot lighter all the way up the coast.
Yeah. I think it accelerates round the corner a bit, Jen, doesn't it?
It looks like it does. I mean, the strange part is I wouldn't have expected it to ever get lighter after the sea breeze finally started to build, but here we are missing the white caps again. So Quantum Racing has put up their Spinnaker, rounded their first place, and stamped their Amway logo into the sky. And this is a very, very solid lead for that team. And I think the one time they don't have an offset mark, so they can just set the kites right at the top mark, which means a little bit harder for the bowmen in these final tacks. In fact, Phoenix coming in. Allegri's got their kite out already. Phoenix is coming in to lee bow Allegri. So we said they were pushing for second and punching for second, and I think that punch has just landed, but the lee bow might be hard to stick. So Allegri starting to roll over the top of them, still has much more momentum than Phoenix on the inside. The kite set between those boats is going to be an interesting fight because Phoenix can try to hold Allegri out as long as they want until they set their own kite, but they've got Sled right behind them.
You
so
see Phoenix
you
going
can't
for the
really
drive
play
set.
a two-boat game when you've got three boats.
Yeah, we think Phoenix will go for...
Drive set in front. Phoenix is going for the drive set, in fact. Allegri is stuck not drive setting because Sled has now got their bow inside of them. So the really interesting part is Azura is coming up through the fleet underneath all of these guys as well, and they've kind of forced Sled into waiting for their drive set. So Sled had already pulled their Spinnaker onto the new side, but they then couldn't ever drive their main across because Azura was in their way as leeward boat, starboard leeward boat until they tacked. So a really fun rounding for these guys. I think the big loser on that rounding is going to be Allegri being forced to hold for so long there. They've been passed already by Sled and by Phoenix. Behind them here, Azura just got into, what position is that? Fifth position, ahead of Prevetsa. They were trailing them the whole time. They were being face planted on by Prevetsa that whole time out there, and just right at the left shift went the way of Azura and not the way of Prevetsa, and that put them up into fifth. Also quite tight behind Prevetsa in sixth, and quite tight behind them is Onda in seventh. All three boats going for drive sets. Azura pulls it off. The other two did not. So a really ugly wrap on Preveza. Their kite's all the way inside the jib, and it is filling inside the jib, which is unfortunate. The same for Onda, except Onda's got like a triple wrapper on the jib as well. So the Prevezas finally got theirs filled all the way through. Onda's is still a major struggle, and they're actually heading dead downwind to try to clear it out, pulling their jib down at the same time, and it should just blow free now, but it'll be a big loss in distance to Platoon behind them. Actually, Onda's had to jibe completely to clear their kite, and it's finally filling now as Platoon rounds behind them into what should be a beautiful jibe set. And yes, Platoon has shown why they were the world champions last year. They've got good boat handling still. They just can't really make their way up these top marks. And then unfortunately the last place boat, Luna Rossa, already had their Seneca out, even though they've got about 5 more boat lengths to go, but that was all just the benefit of hitting something underwater earlier.
Yeah, so more action than we probably would have expected at that top mark, Andy, after such a long race.
That's your tempting fate with her. Well, that's the race over.
Yeah, right. No, but really interesting stuff. You see Phoenix go in there, do the tight lee bow, and then you could see them setting up for the jibe set right away, knowing that the tight lee bow in there works well if you know you're going to jibe right away because there's no threat of getting rolled on starboard. And so very smart move by those guys. And you see a couple of people, coming around, boats coming around and not executing on that jibe set. It's a really difficult maneuver. And you see Preveza and Onda wrapping around the jib. The jib's got to be trimmed almost perfectly in order for the top battens not to get caught on the leech of the spinnaker. So, these guys, it's a limited practice boat, and these maneuvers that they're pulling off are really difficult, and they likely haven't done them at all this season because of the other, venues weren't so course right favored as this one is.
So meantime, Azura then making a little bit of a gain up to 4th, and Sled seemed to have lost out considering they were 2nd and 3rd early on.
Well, I think we might have lost Sled's tracker here.
Right.
They look like they're stopped on the... But, definitely a lot... definitely, a loss on distance at least with Sled to Phoenix, and hopefully we can see their tracker back. But there they are right behind Phoenix. Yeah. But Alegre, the big loss there with 2 boats passing them around that mark rounding, being forced to stay on starboard as this, upwind boats came and kept them from doing that, and Phoenix slipping in there at the mark. It's a very difficult situation for Alegre, and they're going to hope to battle back. It's amazing how much one tactical mark rounding decision can make the difference of 10 boat lengths like it does here. We've got Sled back now. You see the battle's tight between them and Alegre. Those are the closest 2 boats in our fleet now, but there's definitely still room for things to go on. I don't know what you're seeing out there, Jenny, but it looks like they can't stay on port jibe forever, so we'll see if they start short jibing the coastline as they were on the upwind with the tacks.
They probably could stay on port jibe forever here. They are just not quite sailing into the coast. It'll be interesting to see if the breeze gets lighter in front of us, but on the way up, the breeze stayed solid all the way to the coastline. So for now, Quantum's got the best positioning because they're a little bit further to leeward than everyone else, so they can hold off as long as they'd like. But Allegra is in kind of a tough spot because they're sort of, inside of Sled, and they're going to be, there's no way that they can make gains forward or they sail right into Sled's bad air. So for Allegra, they're just waiting for that final time when they all jibe to see if they're then able to maybe affect Sled with some bad air and get back up onto the podium positions. But it was a really tough bounding for them. And as we look at the course, it looks like a little bit more breeze is coming back down. So phasing to the upward phase again, it's coming in through sort of Preveza's line. And you can see it's helping Preveza get much closer to Azura at the moment. Preveza seems to have good solid downwinds. I remember yesterday them making some gains as well on the downwind, so Peter Holmberg sorted something out there.
Yeah, well, Preveza and Platoon both making gains on the downwind at this venue. Maybe a sign of the Vrolic boats being a little bit better in this condition. A great shot here, and we're looking back at the fleet. It's certainly going to be a march on Port Jibe, and as we were seeing before, some beautiful shots of Quantum with the mountain in the background. We talked a little bit yesterday about how that weather system works with the land here, but certainly an acceleration down the mountain and through, near the coast of the breeze. So you're seeing a lot more breeze near shore, and all the teams are going to be fighting for this spot inside.
So that's us coming down the shore of that Cabo Raso point. We're coming downwind quite a long distance, aren't we? But at the moment we're staying closer to the shore. So that's showing the geography then with Cascais there on the point. The yacht club are there in that little bay.
Yeah, so there's sort of three parts to this leg. The coastal part here with the better pressure on shore, and then the middle part more like normal, the races we've seen, and then the bottoms, you're going to see the current from the river start to come and impact the race course.
We've seen the first of the jiving. Sled was the first to jive out, and then Phoenix and Quantum matched them to leeward. And surprisingly, Sled's just jived back as well. So there is the tiniest bit of lighter pressure if you're too close to the shore, and I think they've just decided it's not worth it to get in too close here, so they're going to stay out in the breeze line. And we expect probably the same thing for the fleet behind us. Actually, we're seeing it just now. Luna Rosa is the first to dive way in the back into the tune, just matching them there. But Allegra hasn't decided to go with it yet, so they're holding out what is the final edges, I think, of this pass. And then we should expect them probably to roll into the jibe soon. It looks like there's a lighter patch in front of them in about 10 boat lengths, but it's a hard decision for them to make because they're in a good spot here, giving bad air to Phoenix and Sled underneath them. But yeah, here's their spot. They've just come to the edge of the tough line, and they are all switching places and going into the jibe.
Well, it's got to be tough for them out there on the water to see. I mean, you've got the cliffs are rising, dozens of meters above where the boats are, and sometimes the breeze doesn't quite reach the water, but it's certainly there on the top of the sails, and it's really difficult for them to decide, how close to shore can they get.
Well, here is the puff now hitting the leaders that was back at Corvette and Azura. It took a long time to come down to us, but there's white caps again, so probably another 12 knots back here, and it's a big extension or a big gain for Azura, who was in that puff for much longer than the leaders were, and they've basically caught up to the tail of Allegra. They're only now 2 boat lengths back on Allegra, whereas earlier that 5th position was way probably 10 or 15 boat lengths back. So good for the back markers to be able to bring this breeze down to the front.
Well, maybe that's why some of these boats are starting to jibe out, and they're seeing better pressure start to build away from shore as the sort of sea breeze, pressure-driven breeze comes back here. But we're seeing a little bit of a battle again between Sled, Allegra, Azura maybe getting to the mix. Phoenix certainly in a good spot right now, but we saw that on the upwind with the domino effect and boats tacking in front of each other and taking powerful positions and forcing them to go other directions. And so Sled jibing in front of Allegra there, forcing them to go further inshore. Put Sled in a nice spot on Allegra, but like Jenny said, Azura and Preveza now pushing behind and putting the pressure on the leaders.
In the front of the fleet, you'd think it would be easy running for Quantum, but we just saw them do a spinnaker peel. So I'm not sure if maybe that puff getting down to them, they decided it was time to go for a slightly heavier kite. But I only caught the tail end of it, seeing the Amway kite come down and a new kite go up on the outside of it. But they're definitely not resting on their laurels in this breeze. And the majority of the fleet behind now are all going staysails out. Allegra hasn't done it yet, but Sled, Phoenix have both just pulled their staysails out. So just that tiny bit of extra pressure means such a different sailing style, as we look at them as they're pulling theirs out as well. Allegra stayed in towards the shore much longer than the rest, and now we can see as they cross with Sled if it was a gain to them or to Sled. It looks like maybe a small gain to Allegra, in fact. So Sled is just driving on top of Allegra, but Allegra's closed down that gap a little bit.
It's a great race between these 3 boats at the moment then. Allegra,
good boat race. Both of them, I think, made gains on Phoenix as well. So coming in across Phoenix is driving just in front of Sled's bow, but yeah, not as good as a lead as they have anymore. So probably they're forcing Sled back into a jibe again. Sled's rolling up their staysail, and yeah, they're bearing away to go for a jibe as well. Allegra has already jibed back, so it is the mirror image of the upwind tacking duel. It's a jibing duel to stay on the coastal side at the moment, and I'm surprised Phoenix isn't coming back for it. We saw that they made a loss earlier.
Did Allegra a small gain on Sled and on Phoenix. So Allegra, what they lost in the early part of the run, regaining just now.
Well, that's the trick, right? I mean, you're a little bit further away from shore to begin, but then the boats have to jibe away, and then you get to be closer to shore, and it's sort of like a zigzag for a while. And one boat gains, one boat loses temporarily, and then it's sort of whoever gets that last little bit of gain that ends up in front.
So we've got a question coming in about the rig controls. Not sure who it was from, but just special thanks to Guy Barron from the Preveza team answering these questions from the boat park. Our co-commentator back in Šibenik, in Zadar. He's saying that the mast jack can't be used when we're racing. What it's used for is to lift the mast up, so you can remove the shims when you can, and that takes the load off the heel of the mast. We won't discuss anything to do with headstay length. That's a trade secret. But basically, there's between 1 and 5 degrees of rake and about 250 mil of adjustment on the headstay. So quantum racing, getting down into the better pressure and extending nicely.
Really tight battle with Preveza and Azura. I mean, Preveza's really sneaking in along the coastline, and they just had one puff that kind of made it look like they were rolling over the top of Azura. Now they've sailed too close to the puff, too close to the coast, and have sailed out of it, and Azura sort of maintains their lead because they're staying in it, but it is a really close. It's not waves today. It's just these little pressure lines that connect the dots, but on the downwind, it's more stay in the dot as long as you can, and you can see a team try to puff down and make a big gain, and then they sail out of it, and another team rides it down, and it looks like yesterday in surfing the swell. It's just surfing the breeze lines instead.
Well, it definitely takes a lot of adaptability, like we were talking about yesterday with the communication between the drivers and tacticians, kite trimmers, main trimmers. It's just as difficult to adapt to puffs as it is to waves, so it's chemistry is going to go a long way in making these boats go fast today.
Yeah, chemistry and positioning, I think it looks, from here at least, like Phoenix has made a huge loss now. I think Sled should be ahead of them as they go into this jibe, and I think Allegra probably should be back into the second position between the two of them. However, there is a massive puff right outside of us now that I think Sled is jibing for, and that puff does not at all extend to the coast. And Sled's sort of in the middle ground of not having the pressure that Azura and Preveza are bringing down, and yet they can't really jibe. That puff out on the right is too far away from them. So Sled's just crossed Phoenix here, so Sled's back up into third, possibly dropping into fourth if Allegra has moved back into second. But it is really a much more fun battle on this downwind than we were expecting.
Yeah, it's nice to see the boats a little closer and some more tactical battles going on than and not having the fleet just sort of separate on this coastal. The Sled's been showing a good record on the coastal races, Andy. They've done well. So something about these guys are doing really well in the long distance races. So they're definitely going to be a contender to the end.
Just answering the question from Albi on Twitter, who's asking what happened to Luna Rossa. Well, as far as we know, they picked up a crab pot or some kind of line, and Jenny told us somebody had to go over the side to free it. Is that right, Jen?
I think that's the case. I mean, I think it just looks like this inside line is just that, an inside line to the finish line, and Azura has really used it to their full advantage and has made tons of gains. Allegra just wasn't quite in the pressure that Azura's managed to stay in the whole time, and that's through no fault of their own. The pressure just didn't extend downwind to them, and it is the same sort of thing that 12-knot pressure line is coming down the race course, and the back markers are bringing it down this whole time, and Allegra was too far in front to be able to get it. The funny part now is Sled is making a huge separation from the fleet. I mean, Sled made some big gains inside on the course here, and then they saw that pass, and they went out for it, but they've gone much longer than I ever would have thought. So either they have really good left-hand numbers and they think it's worth staying in it, or they're finally going back for the jibe now, but really unexpected. Okay, another peel here. Azura peeling to what's maybe a lighter kite from what they originally had. Apologies, can't quite tell, but it's a really nice peel jibe, beautifully executed, actually. Perfectly timed as well.
Yeah, well, on the virtual, we're seeing Phoenix actually back up into second here, so it's lots of huge gains and losses in the pressure. You go up maybe 5 or 6 knots out there, Jen. I don't know what you're seeing, but we saw Sled basically move everybody back, in the boat by 10 or 15 feet just to get the bow out of the water as they start planing in pressure, and then while other boats are, they've
you
got
can
the
just
crew
see
sitting
that
forward.
you can see in that shot there of Quantum, the pressure just behind them is light. They're just getting a little bullet on them just now. They're just the breeze coming down off that little cliff behind them and bouncing around.
Nice shot of these guys coming back on starboard, all looking pretty good, but it's definitely a bit more pressure, and you can see the difference in sailing styles, a little bit different heel on these boats, and so there's lots that goes into this, and it's gonna, we'll keep seeing big gains and losses. I mean, the virtual is just showing Phoenix in second. Now they're back to fourth, something 70 meters behind Sled, so lots can still change.
Are amazing as well. I mean, every time a puff comes in, Allegra particularly here, they've been sailing along the coast and just getting the tiny puffs, but they finally have gone for the drive to come out and meet the rest of the pack, and they were in a light spot at the beginning, and then finally got a pressure line, and the bow goes down about 10 degrees, and so it looked originally like they're aiming for somewhere like 5th place, so then they get into the puff themselves, and looks like, okay, maybe they're second after all. So, yeah, it's really tricky racing right now, and Quantum racing, I don't think, has extended as much as we thought. I think Sled actually made huge moves by doing that one big hitch out when that one big pressure line came down, and it looks like they've made a big jump towards Quantum's lead.
Well, here we go, Sled, putting the pressure on the leaders. They're gaining about 100 meters on them in that last little puff, so, never count these guys out, especially in the coastals.
Absolutely. Remember that coastal race in Zadar, Jen, when it was very different to this. It was very, very light, and Sled got away, and that was it. Very slow, but this is a much more exciting coastal race. And for the one or two owners in the fleet who are not such fans of the coastal races, then this is turning out to be a great tactical battle. Little chess match going on all the way through down this downwind.
Yeah, well, that's where sailing gets really fun, Andy. It's
the
sailing that I've been doing a little bit back home. It's you go out and you train speed tests for a while, and you kind of get bored, and then as you come in, the race to the dock up the shore is kind of the most fun part. So.
Great images there on board. Jonathan Taylor, Boise on the tail of the kite.
To us, it looks like Sled's just overtaking Quantum here. Quantum going for the jibe, but slow, and Sled still with all the bodies back, like you said earlier, although they're not quite in the pressure line that they had earlier, so at some point you'd expect them maybe to move the bodies back forward, but a team that's played this tactically almost perfectly is Preveza. They've gone from what was a 7th or 8th rounding at the top mark to somewhere in the 5th now. I think they're fighting with Phoenix for this 4th place position, so American Tony Ray doing a really good job there strategically getting Peter Holmberg to kick his way down that coastline beautifully.
So that's just a shot of the yacht club there in between Quantum and Sled, coming down the outside of the breakwater at Cascais.
Yeah, so Allegra maybe getting a little closer to say hi to their shore crew.
Indeed, but they can go closer into the beach now, whether they want to. I think the breeze probably accelerates along the breakwater. You don't want to go too much further in.
Yeah,
but this is where sled gained yesterday.
If you get too far inshore here, then you certainly get the shadow of the mountain behind. So you probably see a lot of teams start to come a little bit offshore, and we're seeing again still big changes in the lead, but Quantum, again, not extending like we thought maybe, and this race going to end up being closer than maybe we expected at the beginning.
Exactly, and I remember Andrea Vasentini, the navigator on the slide, said he expected some compression down at around about Mark 4. Expects the breeze to be slightly lighter.
Yeah, well, we've already seen
and
that.
And the current
in
would
like
be stronger,
Preveza. Yeah, boats like Preveza, making good gains in sled too, making great gains on the breeze filling in from behind and putting their boats in the right position to get the most out of that breeze filling from behind. And, it's almost, as the breeze increases, it really does help the boats behind on the downwind, whether it's changing up or down. I mean, you just get a lot of acceleration and put a lot of pressure on the leaders before they get it, and the leaders oftentimes are in trouble.
There was just a little shot of the little black retainer that was discussed earlier on. That really holds the lazy sheet for when they're jibing outside and stops the lazy sheet going over the prod. We just saw that briefly on the Quantum, I think it was.
Yeah, there it is right in front. That's exactly what that thing does, is keep it from falling over the bowsprit.
So Quantum still have over 100 metres in hand just now. But it's really in the balance behind. Allegri have gone well into that left side, Jenny.
Yeah, and I don't think it was the right call this time. I think we're seeing the boats outside a little bit more pressured up.
I think so.
Sled came in, jibed, and it looked originally like a good gain to sled over Quantum, but now I think Quantum's just taken off again in the pressure line out there. And in fact, it looks like Phoenix might have rolled over the top of sled, just getting slightly more breeze from the right in that last time. But it's so hard to tell where the next pressure is going to roll down, and these puffs are really, like I said earlier, it's phasing up and down, and this is sort of an up phase right now. But originally they were really coming down the coast hard, and now they sort of are coming down outside hard. And to have made that call perfectly both times is difficult. I think Phoenix probably was sailing too far outside early on, and now outside starting to pace, so they're winning. And sled did that one flyer, and it was a huge gain. And Allegri did really good gains early on the left, and now they're suffering for it. So if anyone's asked as to what the next moves are going to be, but it's still a long way to the third mark.
Yeah, well, you can see on the virtual here, look at their paths and big angle changes with the pressure. So you look behind, and everyone's sort of 10 degrees further downwind in their angles, and that tells me that the pressure's up a couple of knots, and that's going to favor the boats that are in the pressure, which it looks like Phoenix Sled doing a little bit better job than Allegro getting in there right away, but also favoring the boats that are a little bit higher and bow forward, because they can take that pressure down toward the boats that are below them. So Allegro definitely in a hoping for more breeze inside, but in a challenging spot here with not a lot of options.
Interesting. That was pretty much where sled made their gain yesterday. On the downwind, on the longer of the windward leewards, the semi-coastal race it was called, I think.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was a little bit further offshore, so maybe some differences there. But like Jenny said, you're seeing Onda, Azura, these guys go offshore and making really good gains. I mean, Onda, these guys both, previously 200, 300 meters behind the middle of the pack, and now maybe only 100 meters. Yeah. And so, like we said, maybe some compression at Mark 4, and maybe some compression as the whatever the current's doing out of the river, it could affect how the boats go, and definitely going to be slowing things down, and the breeze coming from behind. All these things are going to benefit the boats from behind. So, still anybody can get into this race.
But meantime, Jenny, Quantum holding their own, really.
They are, yes. Quantum stamping their mark on it again, and I think it was interesting they were the first boat to peel, and then we saw a couple other boats peel as well. So they seemed to see this pressure line come down before the rest did, and they were preparing for it. But I'm really impressed with, maybe it's just because we're close to them, but I'm really impressed with Trevesa and the way that they've sailed. I think even at this moment, it looks like they're sailing deeper and faster than Sled and Phoenix. Like they have their own little extra push of energy of breeze on this side, on the left of the right-hand side. And it's not something that Allegra still doesn't really seem to have, but Allegra started to get into this breeze line a bit more, so they're not bleeding as much as they were earlier.
Yeah, so Quantum putting that 100 meter, 150 meter lead back in to what shrunk to almost 30, 40 meters when Sled got close to them. So maybe that's a little bit of a strategical decision that helped, or maybe it's their sail change. I mean, you certainly see an Azura climb back up the leaderboard here, right?
But looking at Preveza pretty lit up there, going nice and fast.
Yeah, these guys, you can see all the crew in the back and really, hiking hard and making the boat plane, and they've got a lot of speed on going here, and they've got a different make, them in platoon as well, different boat make, and it's just slightly different, and could make differences on downwind speed, upwind speed. To my eye, what I notice is they have a much flatter deck surface on the bow that makes the boat a little bit more flexible. And so maybe that could be more forgiving in downwind sailing, whereas the other one's sort of more arced, more windage, but it makes the boat stiffer, better in waves.
I would certainly say that I think the ROLEX boats don't have the sweet spot that they had with the previous generation downwind relative to the Botines. In in a long run like this, in 14, 15 knots before, you would expect the ROLEX to move progressively forward on the Botines in general, and I think that advantage has been clawed back very slightly this year on this generation, and that was what was kind of expected. Platoon and Preveza were looking for better light to moderate speed off the line. Speed and height was what they were looking for, and that I think maybe comes a little bit of at a cost.
Well, sailing is all about trade-offs,
It is, yeah. You get nothing for nothing.
Faster in light air, but that means you're going to go slower when it's breezy, and so you just have to choose what you think you're going to expect, and maybe what you think that the speed's going to matter more. I mean, certainly lighter usually means shiftier, so maybe more speed and breeze is going to make you get fewer points at the end of the season. I mean, these are all discussions that are made by the teams, and it's very difficult decisions to make, just like which sails to put up at the start of this one.
So we just had one of the moments of truth there. Sled drives across and had to slow and just Preveza. So Preveza's moved their way up ahead of Sled, who was second earlier in the race. They used that big flyer outside and got all the way onto Quantum Stern. Now I think Sled's dropped to fifth, because Phoenix, I think, is sitting second. Preveza's moved into the game plan, and Allegra is still hanging on and playing somehow in the mix, whether or not they're behind Preveza or not. But really big moves up the leaderboard there for Preveza and down the leaderboard for Sled, which was interesting because Sled was playing in the same battlefield as the rest of them. They just weren't as fast.
Yeah, Sled certainly pushing against the leader at some point there, and we had a lot of talk about them maybe being a contender for the race win, and now looking like a little bit more of a difficult situation for them to make that happen. Goes to show how much one decision can make, just going a little bit further inshore, and then Phoenix driving on top, and that's a 100, 200 meter loss right there.
So Allegra choosing not to put their staysail up and putting up their jib. I don't see the bottom mark anywhere close to us, so I'm not sure what that decision making is, whether they don't have their staysail in play today. I don't really know what Allegra's doing there, but they're crossing behind Phoenix. They might still have Preveza. They might still be in the third place. They crossed ahead of Sled, so it wasn't as dangerous or as harmful as we thought that left side was. It started paying near the end, but Phoenix, I think, is still easily second.
Yeah, well, Phoenix doing a good job, driving right in front of Sled when Sled didn't have a lot of options and just pushing them back by 100 meters right there. And, now following them inside, maybe protecting the fleet a little bit, trying to consolidate their gains and just round this mark in second.
It's a quick shot on board there with the team on Honda. Almost all Brazilian. That was one of the objectives for this program owned by Eduardo de Souza Ramos. Wants to bring on some young Brazilian talent, and he's doing a great job there. But some massive experience on board as well, and all different disciplines, Olympic 49er skiff sailors, Olympic fin sailors, and Olympic fin sailor, and some Volvo ocean race experience as well. But it's their first season together. As we said, Marco Grail on the helm today, and learning every step of the way, I would say. Privet's done quite nicely down this run, Jen, haven't they?
Yeah, I was going to speak to the Brazilians a bit. I mean, you spoke about them, but there's George Zarife, went to the Olympics in the Fin, and I think he was the youngest to ever win the Fin Worlds when he was just like 18 or even 17. A great young talent, and of course quite strong, so a good grinder on board the boat. Jaakko Signorini, one of the Volvo Ocean Races that you're talking about, who then was one of the head coaches for Team SCA in the last Volvo Ocean Race. And of course, yeah, Robert Steinen. How did Marco look? I can't see your images, obviously, but was Marco happy?
He looks happy. Wouldn't you be?
I would be very happy. I think Allegre quite happy as well right now. They seem to have found a good groove, and compared to Phoenix, they're going well. So I'm not sure if you guys have speed numbers or whatnot, but just by eye, it looks like they might even be rolling over the top of Phoenix here. It's definitely a close battle, and they've made some gains for sure.
Yeah, well, we've seen them gain a little bit of distance on Phoenix on the virtual eye. In these boats, it's all about, I think, Jenny, you put it in a great way, the getting in the groove, and as if you can get the boats rumbling and get them moving in a nice way, then you can make big gains on the boats just directly around you. But as we see, Preveza and Allegre both gaining on Phoenix, so maybe actually getting out of the groove for Phoenix as opposed to getting into it for Allegre.
Yeah, there's getting in the groove, and there's the sail change difference. I mean, Allegre was the first to go up with the jib, and just now we've seen, clearly it was working, so we've seen Phoenix put their staysail away, and they're going up with their jib as well. So I think
Quantum.
It was just a sail change decision-making on Allegre that forced Phoenix into the different configuration also. I can't see what Quantum is holding, but it looks like, yeah, they have the jib up as well.
Yeah, so as the breeze picks up, they want to go staysail to jib a little bit. Staysail less disturbance on the kite, but also sort of less power, less flow. So as the pressure increases, the disturbance doesn't matter as much. The kite's able to stay full with plenty of pressure. So you put the jib up, boat picks up a little bit of boat speed, and you can get planing much easier. It's a bit different out there on the water, Jenny, than it was at the top mark there. You doing all right? Are you getting wet now, or what?
She's hard, don't worry.
I'm sorry.
We're just asking if you're dry, whether you're getting wet now the breeze has picked up.
No, we're fine today. Today's glorious. The breeze is nice, but the downwind is super easy. And my feet have maybe gotten a little bit wet, but that's not the only thing, so no complaints here. Preveza's just coming for the jog from the far side, and they're sort of forcing the rest of the fleet there. Allegre driving on their bow in a good commanding position, and Phoenix is able to drive in front of both. So I think Phoenix still protecting this second place.
So we're just watching the drop on. Yeah, we're just watching the. Yeah, go on, Jen.
Yeah, I think maybe the mark that we've been looking for is actually a proper red mark. So Quantum's just taking their kite down and is rounding it.
That's right. Yeah, here we go.
Scott still a commanding lead. Yes. So good job to the American team. They've held it almost from start to this final bottom mark, and then this is the final upwind to the finish. So Quantum's going to be looking behind them at this really, really close battle between Phoenix and Allegra. In fact, on the key climb for about here, Michelone's going full bore so that we can see the overlap between Allegra and Phoenix and to see if any tussling happens here. But Allegra first to drop their kite. Phoenix dropping as well. Allegra will have to give Phoenix room, and then they're calling. The question now is if Sled has room. And on the back of Allegra, you can see they're very clearly giving the no room here sign, the sort of here's our stern and you're not inside of it. So
there's another one with two fingers.
Or that. He's got the radio out talking to the other chief umps to let them know that that's the scenario. So Sled doesn't have room inside Allegra, but does have room inside of Provenza. So Sled somehow able to get back into that fourth place nicely from that final left-hand side. And
nothing in it, Nick, is there?
Yeah, well, it's amazing to see Provenza.
So go on, Jen. We're just losing Jen a little bit. She's down at the very bottom of the course, Nick. Yeah, nothing in it. Quantum with that lead, but everything to play for up this beat.
Oh, for sure, and it's amazing to see Sled get, Provenza make all those gains on the downwind, only to get too far outside and lose it all right back at the mark. So even on these distance races, you're still seeing these tactical situations come quite a bit into play, and and
you're seeing there Provenza wide.
Right, so
and there's nowhere to go there. You either got to tack up and take your medicine, or just live there and hope something comes in from the left.
Well, you're certainly happy to on those downwinds. You really want to get the inside, knowing that there's 95% port tack on this next upwind.
Yeah.
And so these guys shooting down below the fleet, knowing that two tacks is basically just sailing extra distance. So the only way for them to get clear intelligently is to go down here. But really tough situation for them, and certainly not what they're going to want, because as we saw on that downwind, maybe getting a little bit inshore is this far down is actually not good for having the right amount of pressure, and maybe there's some current action in there or something, but it's not what they would have liked to do.
Meantime, turning into a little bit of a long day for Luna Rossa after picking up that pot at the top of that, or towards the top of that long beat. Bit of an up and down regatta for them after day one. They had a problem with their hydraulics on day one and couldn't race in the first race. Came back yesterday with a strong day, best boat of the day, and today not having to look for their problems.
Designated swimmer was, Andy. We saw them take a little while backing down first before anyone actually got ready to go swimming. And I know we've seen Jimmy in some positions he didn't expect to be in at the last event. He was wearing the harness and up the rig, and he said, I think about 5 years ago I thought I was with this job, and here I am halfway up the rig. So I doubt that he's the swimmer. Maybe
I don't think so.
It was someone else on board, but it'll be a good question to ask on the dock later, that's for sure.
Exactly. Maybe that's why it took them some time to get someone in the water, because they were all having a discussion.
Some boats, it's a designated swimmer, and some boats, it's a volunteer.
Yeah.
The breeze has really picked up here now. It's probably into the 18 knot range. I think this is what we were thinking was going to happen when the clouds went away. It just took a tiny bit longer than expected, but maybe that's the effect of land heating up. We had clouds gone on the ocean, but the clouds are still covering the land for a long time. They're actually still, it looks like, covering you guys some, so it wasn't quite the sea breeze we expected earlier, but it is very much now the Cascais sea breeze that we've seen all week, and the boats are really, really lighting up at the moment. Provenza, as I was saying, when we got cut off earlier, had to take quite a wide rounding there. I think someone in front of them stuffed it on a wave, and Peter Holmberg suddenly bore away hard, and is now kind of this outside lane outside of Sled, Phoenix, and Allegra. But it's just almost a one long racetrack towards the finish line, so there's not really a lot of easy passing lanes here.
So yeah, Jenny, just tell us what's left on this course. Then we're just going up to the finish line, which is just outside of the harbour, outside of the yacht club, the marina.
Exactly. Yeah, it's too hard for us to see it from here. It's too far away, but I think it's going to be a much longer port tack and maybe not even any starboard tack at all. That's slightly unclear, but. If that's the case, I mean, it makes it hard for anyone to really get around, well, Quantum obviously, but to get around Phoenix. You know, they've got a pretty good spot with Allegre just on their line behind them, and Sled had sort of rounded inside of Provenza, but they've gotten closer to Allegre than I was expecting there just to Leeward. So if they can continue pulling forward as Phoenix gives Allegre bad air, then maybe that's the position that we're looking for, that third place, fourth place battle. Back in the pack as well. Azura versus Onda versus finally Platoon is not quite as close a battle as these four boats fighting between second and fourth, but it is still a battle back there. So everyone's going to be trying to figure out how to set their boat up perfectly. It's very different conditions than any of the two upwinds we've seen so far, and so we've got much twistier mainsails, much more open jibs, heavier weight jib than what we saw earlier, and everybody hiking their hardest. This is, like they said, this is a bummer when your tactician tells you 25 minutes on board.
As Stir Fry said, you get 40 minutes in port, you're like, oh. And that's pretty much what this.
Already.
Pretty much what this is going to be, isn't it?
Something like that.
Well, that's why you gotta be smart like Terry on Quantum and tell your guys, hey, hike really hard on this first speed so that when we get down there at the bottom, you don't have to hike as hard because we're already ahead. So. Well, but I know sailing on Terry's boat, he doesn't let them take a break like that. So these guys all working really hard.
But that's a big lead then, 190 meters or so.
Yeah, they're going to be comfortable with that, and like Jenny's saying, not a lot of passing lanes on this last upwind, so even Provenza sled down there a little bit, maybe that opens up a lane for Azura if Phoenix, Allegre roll those guys, but it'll be interesting to see as it goes off, but there is certainly no starboard tack on this beat as we've seen.
Not at the moment, no. So good position for the Phoenix then, for your dad on the tactician's role, along with the Hasselplattner.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they're very happy with how they've been going.
Yeah, they've gone quite well and they've sailed smart.
Yeah, well, they've, the team's always working really hard to get better at things like, douses and sets and everything like that. And, I bet they're going to be very happy to have come away from some of those mark roundings with really great tactical gains. And, they did a good job in this race, executing in the important moments. And that's the difference between being in second and being in fifth or sixth in this fleet. So I'm sure they're going to be happy with themselves as they come into the dock.
So were you in the briefing this morning when they were having the early discussion?
Well, so in the mornings, no, the briefing's the same time as our briefing for the TV, so I can't quite go. But I was there at the debrief last night, lots of video and just some discussions between the afterguard and maybe the bowman area and the trimmers and all that, so that all trying to figure out how they can make the boat go better from every aspect, every perspective, those guys trying to figure it out.
Well, there's one thing it looks like that Phoenix has. It's a lot more sort of Cunningham on the front of their mainsail. Their main's got a wrinkle in a vertical way that the other teams don't really have, and it doesn't necessarily look slow. They're doing just fine out here. The other two below them, Sled and Provenza, have really cracked off and lost about 10 boat lengths of weather gauge, but we still can't quite see the finish line. We can see the harbor itself, but we don't know if it's actually maybe a tiny bit of a reef towards the finish, and that's why it's not such a hard fall spot to be into a reef stop here.
Yeah, well, there's different philosophies, interestingly, about the sail setup on these close reaches. Some people, like to crank on the Cunningham, things like that, open up the top of the sail, whereas others might want to keep the power and keep the heel. But all the boats going pretty similar speeds here. Provenza certainly in a difficult position, so we'll see if they can stay ahead of Azura, who's pushing up against them. I mean, close to them on the virtual. But definitely going to be in a strong spot as all the boats start to press down on top of these guys that had to take the low road.
So if the position stayed the same across the finish line, then I think we'd end up with Azura and Allegra on the same points. So all to play for between the two of them. My projection would have Quantum on 11, Azura on 17 and Allegra also on 17, the way things stand at the moment. But it's close between Azura and Preveza. Not sure that we can see Allegra taking any places.
No, Allegra in a difficult spot here. There's nowhere. They basically would have to roll over Phoenix to pass them.
That's not happening.
I'm not sure that that's going to happen. It's sort of a straight line shot to the finish. But Azura actually having to go below these guys, so maybe giving up on the passing lane and just sort of protecting the boats that they're ahead of Honda and Platoon, just getting down there. Or maybe they just couldn't quite hold high with Allegra and Phoenix there.
So Sled's crown as the king of the coastal races may be slipping in favour of Quantum Racing. Terry Hutchison and a lot of the Quantum guys really have this love-hate relationship with the coastal races. And I think they'll be on the love side of that equation today.
Oh, I don't know. You might want to ask the grinders again after this upwind.
Exactly.
How much they love coastal races.
Depends who you ask.
Yeah.
But a win's a win.
Yeah, you might have to wait a couple hours and give them,
Exactly.
give those guys hiking on the rail, 1,000 calories in food before you start talking to them today.
Yeah, be a little bit hangry. Anyway, Quantum are very much in control of this race, as they have been since pretty much the first mark, I would say. Had that moment coming down the run when Sled got up to them, but since then they've continued to hold their own. Phoenix in second, Allegra third. Luna Rossa looked to have got themselves through Platoon.
Yeah, well, we might have lost Platoon temporarily. Yeah, there they are, back on the closer than it looks, and definitely interesting to see that the distances is between the boats always changing, and so it's just, and it sort of comes down to, like we saw on the downwind, and distance is changing a lot, but whoever ends up coming in the powerful position at the end is the one that's going to win, and we saw that with the rounding. With Sled coming in, 50, 60 meters behind Preveza, but still getting inside of them at the mark, and now they're ahead in the race.
So a nice angle on Quantum looking down the river towards Lisbon and the 25th of April bridge, long suspension bridge.
Yeah, Andy, these kinds of races, when you're sitting out there hiking on the rail, are the times when you sort of start thinking about, oh, this is pretty nice. I'm on this nice sailboat, and it's going out here, and look how beautiful it is. And then about 20 minutes later, you start thinking, oh, I don't know if this is really something. These guys, all working really hard, but certainly better to be working hard in a place like Cascais with that with the bridge in the background than
That's
maybe in
right.
a place like Sweden or something with in the winter.
Exactly. But at Quantum, in terms of this season, really haven't put a foot wrong. Started a little bit in the back foot, a little bit late, but really have done a great job in catching up. Weren't so good in the first regatta of the season.
Yeah, well, Quantum
down in, the training regatta at Palma Vela. Sailed the boat very well, but the boat was not as sorted at that point as Azura and some of the others. But since then, they've caught up very nicely, as you'd expect of that team, and going from strength to strength.
Those guys have been together for a long time, and boat handling is definitely quite good, and they make very few mistakes. And so sometimes even in Zadar, places where it's very, very shifty and light, your execution might not be as important as the shifts and things like that. And sailing is a sport where chance is definitely a part of things. So
that's right. But I mean, I think the key thing was the way that they sailed in Croatia. As Ed Reynolds said, it was more kind of bay racing. It was about picking a side, and that's really not the way that Terry sails. Or they tend to sail the percentages and have good speed. We saw that off the start line. They started fairly conservatively, but did get over to the right early on and had the speed to do that.
Well, sailing, it's all about to me, it's sort of like putting tools in your toolkit, and these guys, good boat handling, good speed, correct sail choices, all these things, puts a lot of tools in your toolkit. And then, when faced with a situation or a problem or whatever, you have options to come over it. And
that's right. I mean, and certainly in the case of Quantum, it's making sure you've got the best tools in every area.
So good teamwork, making it a lot easier on people like Terry to make good decisions, and certainly on the drivers, takes the pressure off for them to sort of be perfect all the time and execute well.
So Jenny, things looking good for Allegri after yesterday. Should move up to second, and I think,
maybe Sled is going to be able to get a piece of them. Allegri's just in the bad air of Phoenix, and there's not really any option to tack out. And Sled with their really early low lane here, if there's any sort of right shift right at the end and any sort of pressure line on the right, Sled could maybe get back into it, but it doesn't really. It looks like Allegra and Phoenix probably have them, but we are getting more towards the shoreline. We're finally coming underneath the clouds that have been hovering over the shore all day, and just as we get under the clouds, we sort of lose that breeze, that massive 18 knots that we had out there. So in here, it's more like 12 to 14, and it's a very different feel.
So where are you?
And it makes you feel like, wow, anything could happen. We're just currently below Phoenix and Allegra, and just sitting above Sled and Provenza. We're right in the mix of it if they do come together, but they don't look to be tacking anytime soon. And then the finish line is just off the breakwater in front of us, so it's just whether there are more tacks coming into play as they get to the finish. That'll be the final question.
So the finish line is set just outside of the breakwater rather than in front of the club.
Yeah, we
it's
still
very,
don't see
very
it
funky as you get into the Well, there she is. There, we can see you. There's a wave, Jen.
52s.
No other way.
Probably the boats are like, what is that random empire about doing waving in the air?
Exactly.
Double-armed wave, you guys good wherever you are. I think this is going to be the final moments here. There are little tough lines. Actually, it looks like the majority of the tough lines are rolling down the coast, so they should hit Phoenix and Allegre first before they hit Sled and Provenza. So I think it's probably pretty easy to say that those guys are comfortable with their spot, but it definitely doesn't feel like a comfortable race course in that way. You can see big puffs and lulls. Right now, we are technically in a big lull, but only 4 boat lengths away from us, Phoenix still has good pressure on the edge of the puff. So, and below, I think Sled's actually just got another puff as well. So it's more the connecting the dots game that we saw earlier on in the second upwind.
So it's interesting. We're just looking at the finish line there. It does look to be a little bit further to the right of where we were expecting, and it can get very, very funky coming into that finish. Seen a few World Championships won and lost in there in the England class, no less.
You can see why as well from here.
Completely.
As you look up from the boats, you've got the city and the mountains, and that's upwind of you. So knowing that the city is a shorter city line, but still there's a skyline there with buildings, and behind that there's a mountain. And knowing that the breeze is coming through all those different places, it's no surprise that there's these little shifts. And Nick was alluding to earlier, the puffs don't always come down onto the water. So sometimes the shifts are just up on here. I mean, actually, at the moment that we're peaking, Quantum's just gotten a little bit of a lift, and they're probably 5 degrees higher than the rest, but they didn't have that a second ago. So it's it's hard sailing. It's not done yet, but I think maybe now we're starting to. Well, no, there's a motorboat in front of us, and I can't actually tell that that's the finish line yet.
Well, it looked like on the virtual we had quite a bit of ways to go to the finish, but certainly, if we could see from the track before, you got quite a bit of, everyone sort of bowed down here, and you look at their tracks, you see them going, big right shift, or maybe it's just less pressure and the angle's not there anymore. But probably a gain for Luna Rossa out there temporarily. Maybe if they sail into it, then suddenly it's not going to look great for them. But these boats that are taking the low road maybe have an option now, as all these boats go bow down, and it's not just an only port tack to the finish. Allegre looking actually like they've lifted off of Phoenix a little bit. Maybe a little bit of a pressure thing there that they've held on to for a while.
You'd expect to start to get some separation in the breeze as you get upwind towards the land. And Luna Rossa are obviously looking for that as well.
Yeah, probably
staying further out to the left,
hoping they can stay in that pressure and stay in the port tack lift and never get into that right hand, light air, right shift.
So their target is Onda. Sorry, their target is Onda
and Platoon. Both pretty close. I mean, all three of those boats pretty close, and suddenly we might have a bit of a battle in the back of the fleet. But what's interesting to see is Azura actually dropping a lot. There was a point where they were pushing Sled and Preveza, and on the virtual was showing them, potentially ahead of Preveza at times, and now definitely fallen way down into their line, and not a lot of options for them anymore. So.
I mean, any speed differential is really becomes more obvious on these much longer legs upwind.
Well, certainly, and as you get, if these guys, Azura rounding a little bit further behind and having to go low, just never able to get out of the bad air of Phoenix, Allegre, and Quantum there. So.
There's a big right shift now as we come into the shoreline here. Quantum's just come down with their bow about 10 or 12 degrees. Sled still doesn't have it yet, nor does Phoenix, it looks like. So it'll be interesting to see when that hits the actual fleet itself, whether that could be a gain later for Sled if it becomes attacked. We've also got what looks like maybe some 420s. There's a group of dinghy sailors sailing out here. Maybe they're even 470s, but they're a little bit too far away, but they're coming to check out the fleet.
But that's what we were saying earlier on, Jen, about this is really as a sailing centre, where there's so much activity on during the summer. You have lots of different classes and programs running.
Oh, it's such a fabulous place to sail. I mean, the ISAF Worlds here, I think the 2010 ISAF Worlds, the 2006 ISAF Worlds before the 08 Olympic Games, and people came and trained for months for those Worlds, and it's such consistent sea breeze every day that it's such wonderful training. You never miss a day to too much or to too little, and there's not a lot of venues that you can say that about. San Francisco is one that comes to mind, but it's freezing there. So to know how warm it is here and that you can get that consistent training and breeze every day, it's a really cool place to sail.
Yeah, well.
Now Quantum's back up, now left shifted again, so Sled's finally gotten the right shift, and Preveza has gone to the tack. The majority of the fleet behind us has tacked on to port as well. So the moment of truth will be when Sled tacks. I think Phoenix for sure still has them. Allegra probably does as well, but we'll see when they choose to tack.
Yeah, it gets squirrely underneath the mountain as you get close to the shore there with both the wind and, I think the current gets a little bit squirrely in there. It can be a lot of eddies, a lot of different things going on. Pressure might not even change, but the water might suddenly move a knot in a different way. And the boat can
certainly
make big gains that way.
The further you get up into the bay, I'm quite sure.
The Sled now on to starboard.
The first time that the punch, well, 25th earlier, so that's the bridge that kind of mirrors the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge. It goes over the River Tagu, and I think it's actually, it calms down the current there, because up here the current goes north to south with the breeze, and down there the river's spewing out the whole time, and so maybe the bottom mark was the least amount of current that we have, but now, as you say, we're coming into the shoreline, sailing back into what is stronger current.
Yeah, so Phoenix tacking now, maybe thinking that getting too far inshore is a risky move, and you see Allegre following them. So Quantum maybe sailing just on the edge of pressure, and the other two boats having to choose below them or go past, and below seems to be the safer option. I certainly know that the guy making decisions on Phoenix is going to choose the conservative move here.
Interesting the spot that Allegre placed themselves there. I mean, they didn't really come up and hit sled the way that you would have expected. Okay. And they've also decided that they didn't put themselves in a good spot, so they're going
Exactly, they're
for
going back
another
again.
yeah, I mean, they basically planted themselves in Phoenix's bad air without giving bad air to sled. I don't ask Andy Horton what that attack was about, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. It might have been just one big right shift, and they felt like they needed to get on the starboard quickly, but now they're coming in with a double hit shot, and we should see them hit sled. Although they're not really going for it. They're going past sled, so they're getting it to, there is a very good solid puff that they're in, and they're sailing further into the heart of the pressure. And I kind of agree with that, actually. It just looks like the best pressure on this race course at this moment is that pressure line, and in fact, sled is tacking for it as well. So Allegre didn't have to tack onto sled because sled's kind of pacing them to get in this pressure line.
Well, Jenny, sometimes when it gets really shifty like this, you tack in front of somebody and force them to tack away, and they end up going the right way and passing you because you forced them to the side that you thought was worse, but it ended up being better. When it's this shifty, it's really hard to tell, and sometimes it's best just to look up the race course and make sure your boat's getting to the finish line as fast as possible and not worry about the guys behind.
So looking up the course towards the finish then, converging with the land in the right a little bit.
Yeah, well, Luna Rossa actually making a good gain passing Platoon here, so that's they're going to be happy with that after being pretty far behind on that downwind. Props to the guy for hopping in the water and getting the boat moving fast enough to pick up a place here on this last little bit.
Oh, they're rubbing some salt in the Platoon winds right now by passing Platoon there.
Yeah.
They might even have a... no, I don't think so, but they could possibly have a bite of Azera and Onda here as they come in. It'll be close, at least, with Onda.
Well, they're close with Onda on our tracker here, and as we get into the shifty, sort of puffy area, it's going to be easy to make 20 or 30 meters go away very quickly.
So we can see marks up ahead of us, but they're the marks of the youth sailors. I think we've got 49er and a 49er FX out in front of us, and the marks are just those guys doing their practice training. They're going to be very much overtaken by some huge TP52s in the second here. I think Quantum Racing is sailing right over the top of the 49er. We still don't see the finish line marks themselves, but Quantum also, everyone's sailing now in much lighter air here. So Quantum getting a little bit of a lefty, whether it's just lighter and left or just lighter. But sled has split hard from Allegre, going far out to the right side. They sacrificed a bit of distance doing it, but it looks like they might be able to stay in the pressure line longer. There really looks like some good right pressure on the bottom of the bay here. So continuing to see if sled can make gains on Allegre and try to get back into that podium position.
Well, that puts some pressure on Phoenix to choose whether they cover Allegre or sled on this upwind. And Allegre making big gains, it looks like, on our... maybe we lost sled, but it looks like big gains for Allegre on our trackers.
I don't what I see my eye is sled making big gains out of the right side. They've got a huge lift and pressure.
We see them there.
It looks like Allegre and Phoenix are much more split upright, not nearly as much pressure. But then again, Quantum's just tacked into a big left shift, and there's a big left pressure line as well. So it's going to be the fight of the two sides, which pressure line wins out at the end. Phoenix for sure is heading to that left pressure that Quantum's in, and that's probably about the same breeze. Both of them are maybe 10 knot puffs. Quantum's line looks smaller. This puff is short-lived but long, and sled's line is a much bigger, sort of fills the bay. So if you could make the hedge, I would hedge the way it's sled. But for now, Phoenix and Allegre can't even get there. It's too far away from them. So, but sled's just gotten a huge lefty So Sled's just fallen out of the right and sailed into the pressure of these guys. And when their bow is down, it's behind Allegre and Phoenix for sure. When their bow is up in the righty, it's ahead of Allegre but behind Phoenix. So it's just going to be how long that puff lasts for them.
Certainly getting quite puffy and shifty just now, looking at Quantum running out of the breeze.
Yeah, it's all
tacking into a righty, as Jen was saying.
All about connecting the dots for these guys, but also really cool for them to sail through those 49ers and the 470s out there. It's certainly, if I was a 49er sailor that had never seen these boats before, I'd be sort of dropping my tiller and looking, oh my goodness, these are awesome. And then that's going to keep me in the sport for 10 more years to see if I can get on board one of these boats. So really cool for these guys to be so close to the junior sailors and who are aspiring to be just like them in one day,
Absolutely.
Moment of truth for Sled and Allegre, guys, and Sled came in beautifully in the righty, and Allegre went for a very, very, very loose. You can't even really call it a leave out when you're separated by about 15 boat lengths. But it's sort of the defeat move, isn't it? When you know you're not going to cross, you leave out and hope that your side will win later on. And Phoenix has just planted one on Sled, so Sled's caught up to within a boat length of Phoenix's turn. So a huge right shift and a huge good move there for Sled. Meanwhile, Luna Rosa in the back of the pack is making the left pay super well, and if it stays paying for them, they might catch up from what was a deep ninth earlier with a man overboard to almost. There's a possibility that they pass Azura, Phoenix, and Onda in one fell swoop, which would be a phenomenal comeback for those guys.
Yeah, so lots of action up here, and you can look at the trackers and see how fast those angles are changing. It's very puffy and very shifty in here. Right. So really hard for these teams to figure it out. Sled making a good gain, and now sort of having to take a little bit of the bad air from Phoenix as these guys look like they're on ley line to the finish from what our system is showing.
It's a nice shot there of Quantum looking up towards the town of Cascais there. Finish line is just on the left.
Yeah, you can see off of Quantum's bow, there's a white mark, which I believe is one of our white, that should be our finish line. Quantum planting was probably their second to last tack there. And they're kind of lucky, but it's so shifty here. They just had a big enough lead to play their own game and not have to worry really about covering against Phoenix. And they've done a good job. They've lost maybe a touch of the lead, but, it's a hard ask here. And I think Allegre, it looked like a big loss to Allegre, but now they've come in with gains since Sled sitting in Phoenix's bag air. But behind, here's the third moment of truth of this race. Allegre is actually trying to duck Sled, and Sled's planting a leave out. But Activus, Azura just ducked Luna Rosa. So Luna Rosa has made
up
their
to fifth,
comeback.
So we've got Quantum Racing coming through the line, Jenny, for the win in this coastal race. Just got a few metres to go. Just a small tack to come in at the boat end of the line. So Quantum Racing stamp their authority on the top of the leaderboard, extend their lead with Zura having just lost out to Luna Rosa, as Jenny was just saying. Ian Moore, they're just pigging the finish. And Terry Hutchison pointing at what's going on behind them, saying that Azura have dropped behind Luna Rosa and Provezza. So that is an extension of their lead.
With authority why they're leading.
And so Sled and Allegre, Sled in third just now.
It's a pretty tight battle between these guys.
Yeah.
Phoenix putting some damage on both of the boats right now, so we'll see. It's going to actually kind of end up being which end of the line is favored, and that's...
at the moment, Phoenix protecting, just holding Sled out.
Well, they're just laying to the finish, just crossing it here, but Sled Allegre, I mean, boat end favor, and you've got the right-hand boat winning, and pin end favor, the left-hand boat's going to win, so... And it sort of depends on the shift, even all the way to the last 10 seconds
Exactly,
here.
It's going to be close between Sled and Allegre. Phoenix should get there quite comfortably. Just watching for the boy.
Sled and Allegre here. Sled's going for the shoot the line before Allegre does.
Sled might just get this.
They had their timing right, and they shot the line earlier than it was on them. What do you guys think, Sled?
Yeah, I think Sled, but you're on the line, Jen.
Yeah, well,
but it's
behind the line, unfortunately, so hard one to see. But I think to me, if Sled was shooting the line at the right time, then they shot it about 3 seconds earlier than Allegre. And They had such a difficult ask because they had Phoenix so close to them they couldn't tack for the line. Tack wanted and Allegro was easily laying the pin, so then you're giving them bow forward towards the pin, and yet they had to wait for Phoenix to go, and then they had to go on Phoenix's line, and every second they were doing that, Allegro was sailing towards the finish line, and it just felt an excruciatingly long amount of time to wait for Phoenix to tack, and I think if Allegro got that in the end, then Sled can blame Phoenix on it, but yeah, that was a tough one. So here, again, we'll see a close battle between Luna Rossa and Azura. Luna Rossa coming in on port near the pin, Azura coming in on starboard near the boat. I think Luna Rossa might have this. I think they might have gone from 9th.
And they have pace just now.
Well, they're going to be able to sneak in at the pin, if anything. They don't need to cross the boat here, so they're just far enough ahead that it should work.
And actually, so Luna Rossa coming in and
big
will
gain
just
for them.
steal it. Yeah, good work
Fifth
to
place.
them on the way
Luna
up.
Rossa's taking it.
Just ahead of Azura and Provenza, yeah.
Here is,
Azura, Azura taking
Azura
that.
did the right thing there, tacking and crossing the line ahead of Provenza. Azura keeping their 6th place there, but that was really close. If they stayed on starboard, Provenza would have gotten that as well.
Yeah, we're looking on board Luna Rossa. Lots of smiles and handshakes and high fives for them. They're pretty happy about how that went. So, you know, funny when you get 5th. Sometimes you're disappointed, sometimes you're excited, depending on where you were.
Having been 9th, I think 5th is like winning.
Yeah.
God, when you're in 9th right now, you're just in a match race with the 8th place. So I think Honda, who's sort of in 9th, is going to keep trying to push Platoon out as far as they can, and they are. And
That's going to be a penalty on Platoon.
And they're both going to end up shooting
Really?
Oh, yeah.
This is an interesting one. So Honda has finally crossed the line, and Platoon is
Insult
forced
to
down
injury
the
for
other
Platoon
side
then,
and
yeah.
center around.
Yeah, well, tough option for
Looking so many
Platoon,
wounds on
getting
Platoon today.
getting pinned down there beyond the pin, and you know, they only had one option, which was basically to try and tack and see if they could do it, and hope Honda didn't stay. Honda staying, avoiding contact.
I think the
Platoon
boys
doing
in
a
Platoon
360
just
here.
can't believe it, can they?
Oh, I'm sure they're not really so happy with how that went, but you know, that's sailboat racing. It's sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So there they are,
taking their turn,
taking their penalty turn, which, you know, it's their only option was to try and push it there, and it's just not going to work. So, and like we say, I mean, it's what was that, a 2-hour race or something, and
down to nothing in the
comes
end.
down to these small tactical decisions at the end that make a difference. And you know, amazing to see all the strategy and everything all playing out in whether or not they can be pinned or not pinned, and laying the finish at the end. And just these boats, these teams are so competitive, and it's amazing to watch.
Indeed. So Quantum stepping clear at the top of the table after that race. A good coastal race then. The win should take them 7 points clear, and according to my very limited arithmetic, I think Azura and Allegra should end up on the same points after that race. But Quantum Racing, 5 times world champions, you'd have to say looking good for a 6th title. Jenny, your thoughts on Quantum winning that race to start with?
You know, I think they're proving why they're not only leading this regatta but this series. They're sailing really beautifully. They're getting off the line well, as we said earlier. They've got good boat speed upwind, good boat speed downwind, and crisp boat handling. So if you get all those things right and you don't make any mistakes, then it's hard to get past them. And I think that's what we saw today. Is if they get ahead at the start, they can defend quite well. And the only team to put any sort of offense on them was Sled, and we know they like the coastal races and they'd won them before, and it was nice to see them take the one flyer and gain out of it. But that was such an interesting, difficult, tricky, amazing race that I think it's cool to see all those guys from 1st to 5th, and huge props to Luna Rossa for coming up that final upwind, which kind of looked like nothing could happen, and all of a sudden they really made something happen for them. So yeah, Quantum Racing did a fabulous job, but well done, Luna Rossa, to not put another 9th on their scoreboard.
Absolutely. I mean, for those who say coastal races are not interesting, get boring, I think that's one for the fans of the coastal races. And here's the results to start with then. Quantum Racing 1st, Phoenix, a good result for them in 2nd, Sled 3rd, Allegra 4th, Luna Rossa 5th, Azura 6th, Provenza 7th, Honda 8th, and Platoon, world champions in 9th, and really struggling a little bit today. So the standings, I think, for the regatta, Quantum Racing, as I said, 11 points, 7 points clear of Azura at the midpoint of the regatta, and Allegra, good day for them, good 2 days for them really, an 18 points. Sled 5 points behind in 4th, Luna Rossa 25, Platoon 29, Provezza 30, Phoenix 31, and Onda on 41. So Nick, Quantum Racing looking pretty good. A couple of quick stats before we close. Quantum Racing, well, there you go. What can we say there? 44 tacks and jibes. Phoenix sailing slightly less, but all very. I think the key stat there is Luna Rossa, less tacks and jibes coming up that last beat. Nick, that's the standout to stat for the day, really, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you look down, the distance is basically whether they were sailing lifted or headed,
exactly.
and the speed is how fast they're making the boats go. And so
Max,
Luna Rossa, doing a really good job cutting the distance down there and keeping it the same average speed. So really, really well done by those guys in that last beat.
No surprise then, the top average speed of the day, Quantum Racing.
Well, it's actually sled, but I'm not sled and on
the average
down there.
speed. The average speed, 10.75. Top speed of the day, sled 20.28 knots. 20.04 for Onda, so Marco Grail not so slow.
Oh, good for them, and all is going to be on the downwind, but good fun for these guys for sure.
Absolutely, and good fun for us on the studio. It's been real spectator sport after all for a coastal race, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, sometimes you're a little worried about the coastal races as a commentator. Going, what am I going to talk about? But there was plenty to talk about on that.
And I think there will be
race.
plenty to talk about again tomorrow. I say Quantum Racing just eking their way clear at the top of the table, but everything to play for. Join us again tomorrow in Cascais for the penultimate day of the Rolex TP52 World Championship.